Thank you to the patrons for supporting the channel.
Hey, it's me, your virtual buddy. No, don't click. No.
A little while ago, I made a video discussing an emerging genre within the online horror and unfiction community, digital horror. In parallel to its relative in the genre, analog horror, digital horror utilizes aesthetics and concepts from the late 90s to the early 2010s as a way to tell their story. And in that video, I touched on why it came about and how its use of nostalgia permeates the themes and execution of series within this genre, as well as analyzing a few notable projects that I found particularly interesting. Consider this a follow-up. Even since that video, the genre has evolved, and while I'm sure there will be a few overlapping points of contact in both videos, the theme of nostalgia likely being the largest, I want to talk about a few new series I've had my eye on, and are connected in a different way, aside from their use of nostalgia. Each of these series have a different play on the concept of a ghost in the machine, a phrase that was initially used to critique the idea that the mind and body were two corresponding but separate things. As time went on, it was used to discuss the primal aspects of the human brain that were still haunting modern, so-called sophisticated humans below the surface, and in recent times has been used to describe emergent AI and consciousnesses trapped in the digital or mechanical world. Each of these series covers this topic, although they do it in a lot of different ways. Let me introduce you to them. The Interloper Mystery. In the style of a video game mystery investigation, Anamade unravels a mysterious console command uncovered in Half-Life 2, and discovers that this feature may not be the only thing hiding within the source engine. Teeny Toys Exploration. Following the owner of the Teeny Toys Exploration YouTube account, we uncover the empty world of the once active Teeny Toys children's MMO. Well, almost empty. AndrewGaming. Take a trip down memory lane with AndrewGaming 67 as he looks back at his old Minecraft server where he spent countless hours mining and crafting and building with his friend Chris. But Andrew may discover more than just memories on his look back into the past. TWRINTK. Going a bit further back in time, we find the transmissions of an old piece of technology still functioning. And while it may appear primitive at first glance, there is more to this program than meets the eye. Summon House. It's just a crappy indie game. Follow a Let's Player's descent into what at first appears to be an innocuous indie game as it slowly reveals something much more complex and unnerving. So there you have it, 5 series. There's going to be a lot of ground to cover, so let's dive right into the first one, Interloper. Okay, pause. Hey, I was gonna have like a whole set, and then this project got super out of hand, so you have me at my webcam. Before I really get into the analysis of these series here, I feel like I should put a disclaimer as to how exactly I'm talking about the ghost in the machine phrase as an aspect and as it relates to these, because there's a lot of different ways it's been discussed, from behavioral psychology to AI, but I just want to get to the root of that phrase. The central element to this whole discussion is the mind-body separation. Is it a separate element from just biology, or as we'll see later, hardware? And how can consciousness, if it is a separate thing, interact in different ways with different bodies? It'll make a little bit more sense when we get into it. In addition, I'd like to vaguely take some inspiration from the behavioral psychology element, but not really. I'll call this an evolutionary or emergent lens. This focuses more on the development of consciousness, how that comes about, for instance, in an AI, and how the primitive origins or the hardware that these things are built upon can affect how they develop. And of course, there'll be the simpler lens, like an actual ghost in a machine, and a more metaphorical lens, how humans interact with the virtual world. I wanted to get how I'm covering this out of the way out the gate, because it's not the traditional way a philosopher would look at some of this stuff, but also we're applying them to web series, so it is going to be a little bit different. With all of that out of the way, let's get back to Interloper. In 2004, game developer Valve launched its brand new game engine, Source, along with a powerhouse of titles, Counter-Strike Source, and of course, Half-Life 2. The impact of Half-Life 2 and the Source engine is incalculable, and the community that flourished out of this new generation of games still thrives to this day. And one quality that has followed this niche around since its inception is an air of unease. I've talked about this phenomenon before, twice actually. Something about the way Valve designs maps, the way the Source engine renders environments, models, textures, lighting. It can feel unsettling. And so since the beginning of the Source engine's life, there has been an ominous side. Rumors of haunted maps, mysterious figures, disturbing backstories. October 24th, 2022. SFM animator Anamade uploads a video titled Interloper, Half-Life's Greatest Mystery, a hefty claim in a series like Half-Life. The video takes the format of a very well-edited video game mystery investigation, introducing this supposed mystery. We're first introduced to the origins of this mystery, which has been dubbed Interloper. In October of 2005, a post was made on Half-Life2.net's forum by user DeVirtuoso, claiming to have found a strange piece of graffiti in the Ravenholm chapter of Half-Life 2. And Anamade shows us that it is indeed there, a dark figure in a coat holding an umbrella plastered against the wall of a dark alley near the beginning of the level. While it could be mistaken for another texture used elsewhere in the game, the Umbrella Man graffiti, there are some differences, some easy to spot and others need a little more investigation. Opening the map file in the Hammer map editor, Anamade locates the texture and reveals a strange glitched pattern that is hidden under the ground in-game. At first, it seems random, but if you're a follower of ARGs, you'll probably be able to guess where this is going. Opening the file in a text editor reveals data you'd mostly expect in an image like this, except for a few strange lines. 4JJ, console interlope, unknown command interlope, console, get s.interlope.pull 27015. A message for someone called JJ. But what does it mean? Well, if you frequently play Valve titles, you'll recognize this. In most games created with the Source engine, you can access a console, which can be used to meet pretty much any configuration needs you could ask for in the game by using console commands. This section right here is clearly a console command. What else is there to do but test it? Those were odd. And what was with that ominous message? Anamade explains that these are demos, another feature available in games made on the Source engine. You can record and play back sections of gameplay, which are then saved as demo files. Importantly, demos are not screen recordings. Source demo recordings store player inputs and world data, and then replay those in-game. So this interloper command generates a demo file, and it doesn't just work in Half-Life 2. We see Anamade test it in other Valve games, like Team Fortress 2 and Counter-Strike, and these demos can even generate whole unique maps that go along with them. It seems to mostly generate random, short, sporadic inputs. At least that's what it does most of the time. That is what the community has dubbed a Type 5 demo. The movements seem natural, almost like they're being animated with motion capture, and instead of aimless gameplay or a spinning camera, we see the character move like it's alive. And of course, we can't forget the Umbrella Man floating in the sky, and how the character seems to be dragged through the air outside of the bounds of the game. Type 5 demos are exceedingly rare, and the most famous documentation of these are two old videos, spookycoast.mov and misty.wmv respectively. But according to Anamade, they are pieces of lost media. The only record of them existing are these screenshots. Anamade was lucky enough to get two Type 5s during their investigation, one of which we saw before, and then another inside of Team Fortress 2. The hilarity of A posing heavy aside, something unnerving is clearly going on here, and it seems like there's something in these demos aside from just the players, something seemingly more sinister. Exactly what it is, we don't know. At around 6 AM, Anamade is still trying to generate these interloper demos, when suddenly, the command stops working. And now, going back to Ravenholm and Half-Life 2, the graffiti is gone. Just like that. The mystery coming to an unfortunate end. Just as the video is about to end, however, Anamade gives us a last-minute update. Spooky Coast has been found. Let's take a look, shall we? And so ends the first entry in Anamade's investigation into the Interloper mystery. It's important to emphasize, in the world of the Interloper mystery, Anamade is seemingly not the first person to dive this deeply into the Interloper enigma. It's been an ongoing mystery since 2005, and still, no one has got to the bottom of it. The strange entities in the game, the random, sporadic demos, and most interestingly, the extraordinary nature of the Type 5 demos. And though this seems to be Anamade's first dive into the mystery, it definitely would not be the last. According to the video, this investigation took place a couple years ago now, in 2021. Entry number 2 picks up a year later. November 9th, 2022, and Anamade discovers that the graffiti is back and the Interloper console commands start functioning again. But there's a catch. Looking into the parameters for the command, Anamade discovers a countdown. It appears that it's a ticking clock before the command disappears again like it did last time. Less than 6 hours remain. The first thing Anamade does for this video is respond to some comments from the last entry, first by explaining the different demo types. Type 1 is the most common, which are just a few seconds of rapidly spinning camera and random inputs. Type 2 consists of the player being stuck outside of the skybox before dying. Type 3s have a little more going on, having a longer runtime, but are comprised of aimless gameplay, walking into walls and pressing random keys, though some have posited that these are inputs that actually correspond to gameplay in a different level. Then Type 4s show actual, meaningful gameplay working their way through a level. And then, of course, there's the Type 5s, characterized by motion capture style movement and anomalous occurrences. One possible lead that the community sent in is a screenshot of a cut source tool called the DM editor, but Anamade mentions that this is likely a hoax. Anamade also tries generating demos on some other Valve games as per viewer suggestion like Gmod and Dota 2 to mix results. Speaking of demos, Anamade shows us that when replaying a demo file, they appear slightly different, almost like the file has been corrupted. Along with that, Anamade provides the map and demo data in the description, so anyone can download and investigate the files themselves. Okay, so I'm going to be trying the Team Fortress 2 demo that was provided in the video. There have been a few different investigations into the demo files by other people online, but I had to verify them myself. I didn't want to fall for a hoax or a game jacker, so I started by booting up Team Fortress 2 and playing the demo. Play demo Fortress. Shit. Fully crashed. Well, shit. I wasn't entirely sure what my next course of action should be. I figured it was a dead end. But then, I remembered that every demo includes the map data as well. So, I booted up the map file and prayed that it would work. Oh. Okay. Okay. Okay, this works. Okay, it is so dark. But the map was 2-Fort, a classic capture the flag map from the game. Now, instead of the bright skies, sentry nests, sniper battles, and sewer encounters you'd expect in the game, we're met with an empty, pitch black void. The sky, a glitching, trailing mess, the world around you filled with missing or darkened textures. There we go, okay. Well, it's definitely fucked up like it was in their videos. Where did that guy see the thing that activated? Let me see. Let me go check. There should be something somewhere that said, yeah, F-Sky. What does that mean? Okay, look. Okay, I did get it. It activates the demo from in here. How did they get the VR to, like, I don't know a lot about Source. I don't know how they got the VR stuff in. Oh, that's so cool. Okay, it does do this weird crashing thing. What is this? Yeah, and then TF2 crashes. So it's actually really here. But what's up with the screwed up models? What is F-Sky? And what causes the breakdown after the demo plays? Questions that are still unanswered. Maybe we'll find more answers in the other demo. Play demo Sea Strike. Let's just see if it'll crash. Oh, okay. It's working. Okay, I think TF2 is just, like, fucked up on my computer. What's crazy is this isn't running in, like, Gmod. This is running in game. In Counter-Strike Source, just like an old-ass game. I guess it's just capturing location, like positional points on a ragdoll probably, but This is crazy. Is it gonna crash this game as well? Okay. So that worked. I could put bots in here. So I'm assuming this is it. This is the interloper, like the Umbrella Man. While the map looks less corrupted at first, there are some things to note here. We see assets floating in the map, seemingly awaiting use in the demo, including errors, the stand-in model that source games use when a model that is in the map file is missing. It seems the Umbrella Man booked it out of there. Aside from that though, I couldn't find anything that answered any of my questions. Just an empty, eerie riddle. What the fuck? Excuse me? There was just footsteps right behind me, like in the game. I think that might just be ambience, but holy shit, that's creepy. Alright, well, cool. The clock keeps ticking, and as the hours turn to minutes, Anamade is working on generating demos in Portal. Something interesting about Portal is that the generation of Type 4s is exceedingly more common in Portal than other games, so this unique aspect has drawn the investigation there. In this last minute of the countdown, we see the investigators generating their last demos. We even hear audio of what appears to be one end of a voice call. The final demo they generate is a Type 5, but the timer that will remove all traces of the interloper is still ticking down, and when it ends, there's a series of connection lost messages, and then all of a sudden, the player can control the camera. Though notably, this character that we were seeing the point of view of stays behind. They float through the map, noting that the level seems odd, different from how it appears in the game.
Yeah, I know, right? I don't think the chamber looks like this. It looks weird. Is that the player? Interesting. Oh. What's the name? It's like show trigger toggle. What?
When they try to reopen the game, well, it's completely broken, booting to an empty room before crashing, and the interloper command is back in remission. Another dead end, for now. Well, there are still a couple of loose ends we can follow, particularly, what is FSky? It doesn't just appear in the Team Fortress map. Eagle-eyed investigators found the statement FSky_SVR_gen inside of the Counter-Strike map's files. FSky's server generation, maybe? They also found a few other hidden messages throughout, such as a map comment reading, "Chicken shit administrators, come get me," and the name of the actual FSky object being, "fuck you." Clearly, someone was mad, and probably breaking the rules. So, again, what is FSky? After a bit of YouTube sleuthing, a video was discovered. Re-upload, 2005 FSky forum ad, 2014, December 7th. Uploaded on the channel Ida Machinima Video Archive. And Anamade posted a cryptic image on the community tab which led to another video on that channel. Re-upload, Interloper Episode 3, The Ghosts of City 17, 2011, November 21st. These appear to be archived re-uploads from a channel called Ida Machinima, who seemingly started their own interloper investigation back in 2011. Before I open up that whole can of worms though, I want to take a look at the most recent entry in Anamade's interloper investigation. This video opens with clips from this 2011 Ida Machinima investigation, which includes some rather important finds. a recording of another Type 5 demo, and one of the clearest looks we've gotten at this mysterious Umbrella Man figure. But before getting into all of that, we're given an overview of some progress made since episode 2. Anamade goes over the demos and maps we've explored, the missing models and errors, and something I missed in my investigation, that the model title for the player model we see in this demo is DMNPC. Maybe Dynamic NPC? Either way, the DM prefix could relate in some way back to the hoax of the DM editor from episode 2. From here though, Anamade dives into the F-Sky discovery and the Ida Machinima channel. So, let's take a look at the channel ourselves. According to the channel's About section, this is an archive, re-uploads of a now deleted channel, Ida Mona Machinima, which was created in 2007, but after some breakdown, they deleted their channel in 2014. This is not a complete archive, and notably, there are missing videos from a year-long period after this vaguely described breakdown, where Ida was still uploading. So let's go over the videos we do have in chronological order. Gary's Mod Zombie Slayer, 2007. This is a fairly dated Machinima video showing off an anti-zombie vehicle Ida built in Gmod. It seems pretty unnoteworthy except for the very end. The camera seems to drop to the ground and then crashes to the main menu, showing the console. Seemingly, the entire video we just saw was a demo. Was Ida Machinima generating these demos and then adding text over them and trying to pass them as their own? How much of this is really Ida and how much is generated by the Interloper command? Let's keep looking. Dr. Breen in the Machine, 2010. This is a fairly straightforward video showing a ragdoll being moved through a classic ragdoll torture map. Interloper Episode 3, The Ghosts of City 17. 2011. Here's where things get interesting. First thing to note is that this is episode 3 of an investigation. The first 2 and any possible future entries are currently outstanding. We hear from Ida himself as he explores this interloper mystery.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 3. On today's third episode, we're gonna focus on trying to communicate with the City 17 ghosts.
The clips he included at the beginning are from the previous episodes. Then he tells us something that, if true, completely changes the game. He says that since the first episode, the interloper ghosts have been showing up in his multiplayer games. His next course of action for this investigation is to create a map for the dynamic NPCs, which he calls ghosts, to communicate with him, like a Ouija board. However, the demos he generates are seemingly just as random and nonsensical as all the other Type 3s have been. But his final question test looks odd. We see what appears from the movement to be another dynamic NPC model twisting and glitching out, and then the camera slowly phases through the wall. According to Ida, the camera moved through complete darkness for 2 hours before something came into view. The layout of a map that Ida didn't make. From here, he ends the video, his voice stuttering a bit at the end.
Stay tuned for that, and thanks for watching.
Long Interloper Demo, Uncut, 2011. This is simply the uncut demo we discussed earlier. Getting another look at this map layout at the end, some have speculated that the map is Hasflick, a modified map from the Half-Life 2 beta in which the walls would change state every few seconds from normal to rusty. Re-upload, 2005 F-Sky Forum ad, 2014. This appears to be a re-upload of a re-upload, something Ida had re-uploaded to his channel, and now this archive is re-uploading from Ida's channel. Note, this is 2014, the last year before Ida's channel would be deleted and after this supposed breakdown. It appears to be an ad for some sort of source server hosting service, say that 10 times fast, titled F-Sky. Notably, the characters that appear in the video seem to be animated with the exact same type of mocap style animation as the dynamic NPCs. Just how exactly is this server hosting service related to the interloper phenomenon? The last thing of note here is that the website URL that appears at the end of the ad is blacked out, censored. So that was a lot. Let's hear what Anamade makes of this. Anamade is quick to point out a few interesting details, specifically about Ida's 2011 investigation. Firstly, that Ida is interpreting this as a supernatural phenomenon, while Anamade and crew are looking at it from a more technical perspective, and there's been no spooky run-ins with the Umbrella Man in their multiplayer games. There's also some questions surrounding how Ida was able to generate these demos. Normally, demos generate on random maps with the interloper command, but IDA somehow seems to be able to specify the location. And of course, one of the strangest things, the idea that there could be hidden elements in these demo maps, possibly hours away from the initial starting point. This Machinima archive channel isn't the only update Anamade has about the interloper investigation though. Remember how Portal completely broke? Apparently, even after reinstalling the game, the issue remained. However, the same can't be said for Portal with RTX. Portal with RTX was a sort of DLC published by Nvidia to show off RTX capabilities using Portal. When booting up Portal RTX, the game still loads into this empty red room. Console commands and menus don't work, but it doesn't crash. And aside from just console commands, there's a lot you can do with a game that doesn't crash. For instance, messing with the launch options in Steam. So Anonymate ends this entry with a call to the viewers. With this new avenue of exploration, any ideas? Okay, so literally an hour after I finished writing and recording the interloper portion of this script, 2 new videos were uploaded to the IDA Machinima archive channel. So first we're going to get to my analysis that I wrote for all the videos up to that point, and then I'm going to go over the new videos and talk about my thoughts. So keep in mind, while most of my analysis still holds up, the following was written before those 2 videos were released. There's a lot going on here, and I suspect there are some details here and there I didn't catch. My forte isn't usually the game part of ARGs, and I'm not exactly a whiz at tinkering with the source engine, but I think I got most of the currently pertinent information across. Still, there's a lot of questions we don't have the answers to, at least not outright. I'm gonna try and give some of my own thoughts, theories, and takes on the story, themes, and execution. Oh, also, big shout out to the Anamade Discord, where tons of talented fans and viewers and source experts are diving into this themselves and coming up with theories and stuff like that. Definitely check that out if you're interested in this. With that said, let's answer some questions, shall we? So what are the origins of this interloper feature? Well, I'm willing to make the leap that it isn't a spooky ghost or a virus or an anomalous bug. I think this was a feature intentionally created during the development of the source engine, probably not meant for public documentation, but some kind of developer tool, explaining why it seems to exist in tons of official Valve titles, and even has ties back to the Half-Life 2 beta. But it's hidden behind the initial interloper passcode, if you will, and seems to only function for 1 day every year. To me, this implies it was a cut feature, never really intended to have been shipped with the games. So why is it still there? Someone has hidden it. Purposefully. The interloper graffiti was left as a secret message for someone called JJ. Someone from inside Valve wanted to leave it there specifically for JJ to find. It wipes itself from existence after the specific date and time because it needs to go unnoticed, not just by the public, but the rest of the Valve staff as well. The purpose of this demo generative tool isn't obvious. Why include it as a feature to begin with? And the demo types it generates, the developing levels of complexity, I'm sure there are a number of conclusions you could draw about this, but my mind immediately went to a genetic algorithm. Alright, I'm not a computer scientist or even just very good at math, but I did consult with a friend of mine about this concept, so here's the gist. Genetic algorithms attempt to solve difficult optimization problems by modeling computer programs after natural selection. A population of different individuals, or organisms, are generated with slightly random mutations, and the organisms that perform best get to continue on, and the cycle continues. You've probably seen these algorithms in action before, videos of strange 3D creatures learning to walk, or even Theo Jansen's Strand Beasts. These algorithms laid the foundations for artificial intelligence research and paved the way for future, more complicated neural network-based approaches. Now, let's take a look back at the interloper demos, generating mostly these random inputs, then getting a little more stable, interacting with the world more consistently and for longer periods, until it's actually playing the game correctly, as the broken or inefficient mutations are culled quickly, and as they get closer to working correctly, are allowed to continue. And then there's the Type 5s, where the dynamic NPCs seem almost alive, their movements more human and reactions appearing almost more sentient? And that name, dynamic NPCs, what does that seem to imply? A new, more adaptable and dynamic non-player character, an in-game AI that performs better than anything else on the market. So why, when it gets to be really advanced in the Type 5s, does this Umbrella Man seem to intervene? Well, this Umbrella Man's origins is not entirely clear. What do we know about him? He seems to mostly appear in the Type 5 demos, disappears upon replaying these demo files, and seems to have a lot of control over things, floating through the air, teleporting, seemingly dragging the dynamic NPCs through the air, and completely corrupting a game's file during the portal segment. To me, all of this points to the idea that the Umbrella Man functions as a sort of guardian of these demos, and that the purpose could function on multiple levels. Maybe it's there to keep nosy players like us from investigating too deeply, stopping us from discovering whatever is left for JJ's eyes only, or simply to stop people from messing with the Interloper feature. It could also be there to get rid of these more intelligent Type 5 NPCs. Sure, you want something that works, but not something that's going to become self-aware or try to break the bounds of the game. So it drags them out into the skybox, which we've seen before in the Type 2s lead to the death of these NPCs. This guardian role would explain the warning message in the beginning. You're not supposed to be here. This is a hostile environment. And if it really is to stop unwanted investigation, it would explain why it corrupts the demo afterward. The Umbrella Man is wiping himself from the picture and contaminating the data you would use to look further. It's also definitely possible that the person who left the message for JJ also isn't welcome there and has been leaving messages as they try to evade the administrators, which that use of the plural administrators would make sense as we see multiple of them in the Spooky Coast demo. Either way, that's my current working theory on the purpose of the Umbrella Man. At this point, it's really hard to say what FSky is, other than some kind of third-party hosting tool for Source that is in some way utilizing the Interloper command, which may be why it's no longer active, being taken down for an unauthorized use of a confidential feature. My current thoughts about how these two are connected is that the Interloper command isn't functioning entirely locally, within the game. It's drawing in some way from the FSky servers, which is why we see the phrase connection lost after the timer runs out in episode 2. Maybe the Interloper command really was removed before the game shipped, but they're able to essentially stream the needed components from the FSky servers. If the FSky servers are only open for a limited window, it would explain the ticking clock element. In that case, leftover messages about administrators could be left over from FSky servers when they were active. Again though, there's not a lot to go on. Well, on the surface, he just appears to be a regular Source fan who encountered the Interloper mystery online and started his own little investigation on it. However, there are still some questions. Why is he getting the Umbrella Man in his games? Well, it's possible that he's using FSky servers to play, which are utilizing the Interloper command in some way, thereby activating the Umbrella Man to follow him. I do have another theory that is a little more far-fetched, but I think the seeds are there, so bear with me. Ida isn't human. He's one of the dynamic NPCs. The first two things I noticed which led me down this train of thought were the endings of the Zombie Slayer video and the 2011 Interloper investigation video. In the Zombie Slayer video, we see this whole video play out, accurately replicating a typical Garry's Mod YouTube video before revealing that it was an Interloper demo. Then, at the end of the investigation video, Ida's voice stutters in a particular way.
Stay tuned for that, and thanks for watching.
If you're an avid player of Source games, you'll recognize that little stuttering, repeating sound that occurs with in-game audio when loading into a new level or when a game freezes up. It's almost like Ida's voice was coming from the game, and when looking at it through this lens, other things start to make sense. It's why the Umbrella Man is appearing in his other games, coming after him. Its whole purpose is to eliminate these more evolved dynamic NPCs, to stop him from escaping out into the world. Maybe his breakdown and channel deletion was really just the Umbrella Man getting to him. He's a game character generated by the Interloper dynamic NPC algorithm. A much further evolved version, of course, but still a game character nonetheless. Now, obviously, the specifics as to how it's editing and uploading these videos gets a little fuzzy, but until we get more information, I think that's at least a perspective to keep in mind. Thematically, the series is covering a lot of the same ground we see in other digital horror projects, utilizing the nostalgia factor of some niche to draw you into its world as memories of your past connect with those of this new work, creating a stronger emotional tie to the series and melding reality and fiction to create a believable world, despite the unbelievable things going on. For the Interloper series, the niche it employs is the world of Source and Valve games, yes, but also a specific genre of internet and video game mystery videos. It's recreating the feeling of stumbling across something unsettling in a game, forum and playground rumors of old, before the time when every single game was decompiled and picked apart on the day of release, when there was still an element of mystery. Interloper is almost like a creepypasta for the modern age. And of course, it's also playing into the well-documented creep factor of Source games, playing a multiplayer map alone and still feeling like something is there. And then it gives us the Umbrella Man, confirming your suspicion. you aren't alone. Then there's the element that ties this series in with the rest I'll be covering in this video. The ghost in the machine. Now, of course, something like the Umbrella Man could be considered this ghostly figure inside of the game, but my focus would be more on the dynamic NPCs. This concept of an emergent AI, a consciousness developing in the game, and the horror of both the Umbrella Man coming to destroy this consciousness and the existential horror of this AI gaining self-awareness and understanding the nature of its reality. On top of that, if my theory about this AI developing using genetic algorithms is correct, you've got an element of the primitive mind, this AI slowly becoming more advanced and self-aware but still being built on top of the primitive structures it came from, not only in the sense that it's building off of the other demos, but the dated and unstable software it's being built in, an almost 20-year-old game engine, crashing and corrupting files at every turn. The final thematic thing I'd like to touch on is how these dynamic NPCs seem to relate to the last source-based series we cover on this channel. Lastly, I just want to give some praise to Anamade and talk about just how well this thing is executed. I think it's one of the most well-edited series I've covered on my entire channel, completely nailing the video game investigation style, and not only that, being one of the better looking and well put together entries in that genre, even though it's a fictional mystery. And its framing as an investigation adds an element of authenticity, where the viewer feels like they're discovering something right along with the creator. I also appreciate how technical it is, despite the fact that I'm not really well versed in the behind the scenes aspects of the source engine. The way it employs ARG elements by allowing the users to actually explore the in-game files we see and allowing the community to point out and discover things themselves, sometimes requiring an intimate knowledge of the source engine or Hammer map editor, is really fascinating. And yet, it still has these layers of entry-level elements. The Anamade videos end up showing you anything you might have missed by not downloading the files. You can then download the files and play the map if you know how to boot a custom map in a source game, and then you can start getting into the game files and breaking down that sort of thing if you're a little more tech savvy. And because of the specificity to the source engine and community, it makes it really unique and connect especially well with its niche. The only criticism I could really give is when I first watched it, the hard cut to the sort of mocap VR style animation definitely took me out of it a bit. It had all felt so believable up to that point, and once you put something as recognizable as that animation style, it becomes pretty clear what the creator is doing and breaks that suspension of disbelief. Still, I think it's able to get away with this because of how technical it is. You can see it in action in your own game, and the videos feel like they're explaining to you how this stuff is working within the game, instead of just, it's supernatural spooky stuff. So even that aspect didn't bother me too much. Okay, so let's go over the two new videos. I'm gonna start with G-Man Eats Too Many Tacos. Now, it's essentially just about G-Man farting, so there's not a lot to gather from this, except that it's apparently their first machinima, and notably, the opening introduces it as Jan's video, or maybe Jan, I don't know. Where else do we have J names? JJ. It's possible that this message inside of the Graffiti Man image was for Ida or Jan, especially knowing the connection of Ida and F-Sky and the Interloper command. But this other video is where things get a little more interesting. Uploaded November of 2014, this appears to be the last video Ida ever made before deleting the channel. Okay, that's it. I've had enough of this shit. I'm quitting YouTube. I'm stopping my projects and I'm deleting everything. I hope you're all happy. Now leave me alone. Lastly, I deleted Mona. Proof. What we see next is incredibly strange and unsettling. It appears to be a screen capture of some kind of source editor, most likely the DM editor we heard about. In the center of a dark room that looks strikingly similar to the room in the broken version of Portal is some kind of figure. It has glowing eyes like some of the other dynamic NPCs we've seen, but it almost seems like a statue. There are some miscellaneous objects surrounding it, including a cup. Its arms move in an erratic, jittering pattern. Ida hits delete and an error appears, moving almost like it's being controlled, knocking into Mona, who falls apart before disappearing. Thanks for nothing. The description reads, "You win. I quit. Now leave me alone. This is my last video. In a few hours from now, I will delete everything on the channel, just posting this video as proof. Then I'm gone, deleting my YouTube and Steam and server. Goodbye and fuck you." Okay, so what can we make of this? Well, first, it does make me think my theory about Ida being a dynamic NPC was probably wrong. Not that it explicitly ruins it, so I suppose that could be a future plot point, but for now that just doesn't seem like the direction this character is going. So what's up with Mona, and what happened to Ida to make him completely quit? Well, this isn't the first time we've heard the name Mona. I didn't even really think to mention it, but the character he's protecting in the Zombie Slayer video, he refers to as Mona. So Mona seems to be some person or character or name that is important to Ida in some way. So what is this new version of Mona? To me, this seems like a furthering of his testing of the Interloper command and specifically the dynamic NPCs. If I'm right about the dynamic NPCs being a sort of evolving AI, it seems like Ida is trying to bring this Mona character to life. Maybe he's trying to train it to interact with objects, maybe to grab that cup. He's trying to make his very own living character. It seems to me like the harassment that led to the deletion was probably caused by this. Either he became strangely obsessed with the Mona project, or people started realizing the horrifying implications of trying to bring this entity to life and tried to get him to stop. In the description, he also mentions a server, probably an FSky server he was running, possibly running these experiments on, but also possibly allowing other players to join. And maybe those messages we see left behind in the demo files are from Ida's harassers running amok in his server. Chicken shit administrators, come get me. There are a couple other observations I noticed myself, along with those in the Anamade Discord. Firstly, the character model for Mona seems strikingly similar to the dancing character in the FSky ad. And then there's the weird deletion process with an error floating around like it's a separate entity. The only place we've really seen errors appear so far have been the manifestation of where the Umbrella Man used to be. And we know that the Umbrella Man is known for being able to float through the air and possibly kill these dynamic NPCs. So my guess is Ida is unleashing the Umbrella Man on Mona to get rid of her. Other than that though, this was all very last minute, the downsides of covering such an active series. In fact, in the time between writing this update and editing the video, a teaser for another new update has come out, so I am on the clock here. So I'd love to hear what you all think about these new videos in the comments. The Interloper mystery took us deep into the world of one of the most iconic games of all time, and let us experience the feeling of discovering something new and unsettling. A mystery that led us through the game files and mysterious YouTube channels, uncovering strange messages and decoding cryptic photos. In the dive to uncover the Interloper mystery, we fell deeper and deeper, and may have unearthed more than we bargained for. A ghost in the machine. In our next series, we're taking a look at another game, but instead of discovering something new in an iconic and well-known IP, we're going to be diving into a forgotten game that no one remembers.
Don't.
If my analytics on YouTube are correct, then most of you watching this video will be between the ages of 18 and 24, which means you grow up in the early 2000s and 2010s. What a time to be a kid. Tamagotchis, Frutiger Arrow, brightly colored Motorola cell phones. And if you were lucky enough to have a stable internet connection and your parents' permission, the world of 2000s MMOs for kids was an open door to a cartoon world of adventure. Club Penguin, Pop Tropica, any multitude of 101 games, Monkey Quest, Webkins, Moshi Monsters, Toontown. Online worlds where you could interact with hundreds of other people in a mostly safe way. Playing minigames, leveling up your characters, trying to convince your parents to pay for a premium account, trying to say something as succinctly as possible using the pre-made sentences in the safe chat feature. Over the years, many of these games shut down. The bustling cities of childhood fun wiped from existence or left empty with few survivors. But what if one day, your favorite of these toony MMOs came back online? What would it be like visiting that virtual playground of your childhood after so many years? On November 14th, 2021, a YouTube channel was created called Teeny Toys Exploration, but it wouldn't upload a video until June of the next year. The description is simple. Hello guys, let's explore this game together. Well, it would be rude to turn down such a gracious invitation, wouldn't it? The opening of our first entry serves as an initial introduction, introducing protagonist, player, and uploader of this channel and the game he's going to be exploring. He introduces himself as Diego, and the game we're seeing is called Teeny Toys.
Hello guys, my name is Diego, welcome to my channel. So, apparently they reopened the Teeny Toys servers?
Diego grew up playing Teeny Toys, a kids MMO released in the 2000s, similar to many of the games I discussed in the previous section. And, also similar to many of these games, it shuttered after a few years, strangely without any warning or explanation. The servers just shut down, and suddenly, all these years later, they've reopened the servers. Seeing this news, Diego has decided to take a trip down memory lane and explore what might be new, or have stayed the same, in this game from his childhood, and take us along as he does. Diving right in, Diego tries logging into his childhood account, and is surprised to see the account is still intact after all this time, even his old character. However, for this exploration, Diego decides to create a new character, using an empty slot. Designing his tiny wind-up robot, the next step in the creation process is to answer a series of questions, which seem more and more arbitrary. And as Diego answers more and more, we can see him become confused by exactly why these questions are even being asked.
What are these questions, by the way? Not a lot of choice here, but I'll go with...
Many of these questions don't seem incredibly important as of now, but I'd like you to take special note of a couple answers. Diego answers that he likes to play video games in his free time over the options of eat and go outside, and when asked if he likes to play in a group or by himself, he chooses by himself. After the long series of questions, he gets to choose his name, though the enter your own name and randomize buttons don't seem to be working, leaving him to create the name Noisy Beep Boop from the name selector. This format of naming your character will be familiar to anyone who's played a good amount of these 2000s MMOs for kids, a way to prevent anyone from making crass or inappropriate usernames. He's taken to a loading screen of 3 robots, before being loaded into what appears to be a sort of tutorial room, with a teddy bear and images of slightly uncanny stick figures. It becomes pretty clear what the aesthetic of this game is: small toys inhabiting a giant house, Toy Story style. Carl, the teddy bear, introduces Diego to the world of Teeny Toys, the mini-games which are a core element of the world, which let you earn credits to buy items. Carl also puts special emphasis on interacting with other players, playing mini-games with other players, the social aspects. The tutorial ends abruptly, leaving Diego a little stunned.
Well, that was quick. I guess that was the tutorial, or...
So, Diego finds his way out into the wider world of Teeny Toys. During the loading screen into the new area, we see that one of the robots is missing from earlier. Diego enters a new area, a massive green-tinted living room, plastered with flowery wallpaper, complete with massive furniture and massive doors of different colors. An expansive world, but empty. Entering into this new area, Diego tries out the chat function before signing off. Until the next video. Diego explains that his plans were to play the minigames and interact with other players, but so far he hasn't found anyone, speculating that he may still be in the tutorial section. In the hopes of finding other players, he tries the colored doors to the other rooms, but they all seem to beep in the negative. For now, he's stuck here. With nowhere else to go, Diego tries some of the mini-games available in this room, starting with a simple card memorization and matching game, which yields a lot of credits. Playing twice, he receives over 1,000. The other mini-game, Carl Says, which functions essentially as Simon Says, yields much fewer credits, despite being markedly more difficult. Diego reiterates again that he may still be in the tutorial section, which is why he hasn't found anyone. Although as time goes on, I'm beginning to find this less and less likely. Finding his way up to some new mini-games, these all beep in the negative similar to the doors. It seems that these are multiplayer and require another player to use them. With not much else to try, he ends the video. While Diego's been away, he's been playing the game, hoping to finally move past what he perceives as the tutorial stage and finally be able to interact with other players. But still, nothing. However, he has discovered that these mouse holes in the walls actually work as passageways to otherwise inaccessible parts of the world. Using one of these, he's able to gain access to a cozy shop where a bunny sells various unmarked items, some containers of maybe honey, and variants of what look like some kind of metal canister. Clicking through the pages, they all seem to be the same, except the very end, which contains a pink key, likely corresponding to the pink door. Also of note, the handle of the key appears to show the letter D. It may appear right now to just be a vague shape, but as we go on, you'll see why I'm confident that it's a letter. However, this key is incredibly expensive, far too many credits for Diego to afford right now. Deciding his next goal should be to save up for the key, he does buy one of the unmarked items just to see what it is. Next, he tries opening the menu to see his inventory with the new item and see what other options there are. There's the usual stuff like settings and a world map. There's also a calendar, currently unmarked, and a server list, showing Diego to be the only solitary player in the game. He's alone for now. Seems there goes his tutorial theory. In his inventory, we see that the item is called a Mega Increase, the description of which reads, Feeling exhausted? Use this. Doesn't explain too much. For now, Diego ends the video. Diego is back with the credits he needs for the key, after a lot of grinding and minigames. However, after logging into the game to make the video, he's greeted by a strange storybook written in Italian. Note, the game has been in English, but Diego's YouTube About section places his location as Italy. Diego tries his best to translate this to English, which we can read in the description. So, here's the story. Once upon a time, there was a very young lion. He was a peaceful and tranquil creature. He spent most of his time playing. One morning, the little lion woke up and realized he felt different from usual. He couldn't really understand what it could be. Nothing special happened in the previous days. The little lion's parents instantly realized the condition of their loved son and tried to help him in every way they could. Despite all their efforts, the tiny lion kept feeling worse and worse, so they asked the sage of the village for help. "Great sage, we beg of you, help us," said the parents while crying. "You will have to take him to the great bear's home. Only him, thanks to his machinery, is able to help all the creatures in dire need," replied with confidence the sage. After several days of travel, they managed to reach the house of the Great Bear. They entered and found a huge place, covered with machines of all kind. "Welcome. What brings you here?" said the Great Bear, adjusting his round glasses back in place. "We came from far away, seeking help. Our little one is in serious condition," they replied. "To help your son, there is only one solution. I will have to use my machines. This, however, will make him a different creature from us. I'll replace his paws with mechanical apparatuses. His body will not have fur anymore, but cold metal armor. Your son will stay a lion only in his brain. His body will not be made of flesh and bones anymore." The parents, desperate by now, looked at each other in the eyes for a few seconds and decided to accept, aware that this was their only chance, and that is how the little lion was helped by the Great Bear to get better. Very odd. Also of note in the description, Diego apologizes for not being too enthusiastic. "Feels like I'm playing a new game more than anything. Sorry for not being super excited, but it seems like they removed most things I remember being fun to play. Kid me is a bit disappointed." Moving forward, Diego buys the pink key and is now able to access the pink room, an enormous kitchen and dining room with what could be lollipop or baby rattle wallpaper. When Diego enters, he begins formulating a plan for his direction forward, what to explore before interrupting himself.
Actually, we entered this room to see if there was... Like, our main objective was to see if we could see other players. But I was so used to playing on my own that I didn't even think of that at first. Which is weird, getting used to playing on my own in a multiplayer game. Doesn't sound right to me. But yeah, I played so many hours on my own that I didn't even notice.
The game has been so empty for so long, he almost forgot he came here to find other players. Using the mouse holes, he's able to enter another shop, but is disappointed to find no key available here. So he tries some of the newly available minigames in this room. He starts with a math problem game with very loud and irritating music, which he notes is making it hard to think.
This music is really killing my brain right now.
After receiving very few credits for it, it annoys him so much he decides not to replay it. As he moves on to his next game, he notes just how lonely it feels. He remembers it being populated by a great deal of players when he was a kid, but now it's left deserted. The next game is a first-person maze where you follow a vaguely unsettling beeping sound to collect sweets. He continues to seem pretty unenthused about the whole thing. He also notes that there doesn't really seem to be any correlation to the difficulty of the game to the reward. If anything, he's getting less points. Diego seems lost, confused, but wants to keep exploring, and promises to keep us updated if he finds anything. This episode startlingly starts with a loud beeping as Diego silently walks through the world. The mouse suddenly begins moving in a very unnatural way, opening the menu before it seems like Diego takes control back. This back and forth happens again until Diego seems to understand what's happening. The game is trying to show him what to do. Use the mega increase, which he does, and after a moment, the beeping stops. Taking a look at the top of the screen, you'll notice that the meter we'll call the battery was at 100 when he started the series, but at the start of this video had fallen to 52, which was apparently too low, and using the mega increase brought it back up to 78. As Diego talks about how strange everything is, noting that the point system in the minigames almost seems random, he notices a broken vase on the ground, and in the wreckage there's a yellow key, this time engraved with an I. Strangely, the description of said key reads, "The past is the key to the future." Odd. Diego continues to explain how hard it's been to make videos about this game because he keeps either getting stuck or odd things occur. It feels unpredictable. Before he ends the video, he sees some more carnage in the living room. Furniture scattered, fallen over, and clipping through the ground like some giant earthquake had blasted through the house. He wants to try something before going straight to the yellow room, but decides to save both for the next video. We start off the video back on the green shelf. Diego explains he's bought one of each item in case he needs to use them in the future. He wants to test fall damage, which he does, to find that there is none. Before he can explain his idea, another player suddenly appears.
What the f-
This player's robot seems to be in considerably worse state than Noisy Beep Boop. Dented and damaged, missing an eye and an arm. Stunned by suddenly encountering a player after all this time, Diego immediately greets this newcomer. Their conversation is as follows. "Where's everyone else? What happened to you? Remember how many of us used to live here? What? Does this feel real to you? I don't understand. It was bound to happen. The power we had, the influence we had on this place, it's gone now. But it is not your fault. Don't blame yourself. We don't belong here. Not anymore. But you have to do it. You have to open it. We can't change that, sadly. You'll know when. Do you still remember that urban legend? Everyone was talking about it back then." "Yes, kinda." "Good. It's gonna help you. Can we play together? Please, I have no one to help me." "This is familiar, right? Being lost, not knowing what to do. You're used to it by now. It's gonna be hard, but this is something you have to do on your own. I don't have much time, and please pay attention to the numbers. You know what happens." "But why can't you just help me?" "I have to go now. Please don't be scared. We both know how strong you are. Check under the kitchen table. See you." Then, the robot runs off. Diego tries to pursue them, calling for the robot not to leave, but the broken bot disappears through the purple door, and when Diego tries to follow, the door won't open. Diego sits in stunned silence for a moment.
I couldn't even.
Unsure of where else to go, Diego moves to the pink kitchen, where the loading screen now shows a pair of scissors. And now, inside the kitchen, under the table, there's a red key and a pair of scissors. The description for the key reads, "Some things are meant to happen, no matter what." Here's where it gets really clear that these are letters. The handle contains the letter G. With all these letters, as of now, we have the word dig. The scissors description reads, "Are you still scared of this color? I know. There are some things we never get used to." Diego then ends the episode abruptly.
Well, see you in the next video.
A couple weeks after this entry, the profile picture and banner changed, now showing broken dishes from the pink kitchen in the profile picture and a different view of the green living room, one that almost looks like a POV shot of someone peeking out from a shelf. Oddly enough, going back to entry number 5, we can see something at the top of the shelf near the photo of the car, although it's so small it's hard to make out. One thing is certain though, Diego is not as alone as he thought. On November 14th, the year anniversary of the channel's creation, things changed again to just solid blue. This only lasted a day before it was changed to Carl the Bear in the profile picture and the stick figures from Carl's room as the banner. This is where things were when I started writing, but much like Interloper, while I was making this video, a new episode dropped that really did change a lot. Going to the description, we see Diego reflect on how strange this game is and how sad he is that he can't really remember what the game used to be like in his childhood. The game meant so much to him, and yet he scarcely has any memories of it. New memories are replacing the old ones. But he needs to keep playing, even if it makes him frustrated or sad. It seems like he feels that he has to open the game. Booting back into the game, the first thing we see is the character select menu, which we haven't seen since the first episode. And since then, it's important to notice a few things that have changed. First, the lighting is much darker, and because of that, it might not be immediately noticeable, but Diego's childhood character has changed color to a shade of blue. This looks oddly familiar now. You may have guessed by now, this is in fact the same model of the broken bot, but just obviously not broken. Same head, Body, color, very odd. Going to what Diego is saying in this opening, he explains that he hasn't played since the last video. He just didn't feel good. For this video, he's going to try to play using his childhood character to see if there's anything different. Loading in, the loading screen is a split in red and blue with a pattern of eyes and a drawing of a house, also split in half, with one side looking considerably more decayed. We load into a massive room, split in the same red and blue color scheme, the walls plastered with the pattern of eyes and medical imagery, lungs, hearts, brains. None of the doors work so far. Green, red, blue. He's locked in for now. On the table sits the same drawing of the split house. Aside from the menu, the rest of the HUD is missing, and an unsettling beeping sound is playing over everything. Clearly confused, Diego looks to the menu where he finds a photo book, a library of his past screenshots from childhood. Most of these are from around 2007, the first of which are Diego celebrating his 7th birthday with some of his friends. Looking at these images of the game, we see just how different the game was back then. The house is filled with a sort of miniature cardboard town throughout these rooms, but Diego doesn't seem to remember this, confusing him. One of these buildings is especially of interest. This is the center of the urban legend we heard about in the last video.
I kinda remember the urban legend, and I think this door was the center of the urban legend, because here, see, distance, I think I was trying to see if this thing was long enough to, you know, go up there, but I don't know how you would tip it. And I remember this because I think people were saying you could enter that door and you could hear weird sounds at certain hours, but I don't know, I guess I better remember this though. It's like I have very few images in my head of how the game was.
So some strange sounds could be heard from the door, and if you could get to the top, something would be there. In some of the screenshots, we see Diego and a group of friends, apparently during a time when lots of people were leaving the game, taking these screenshots to show that they're still playing. However, following the progression of images, we see one of the people in this group falling to the ground and falling through the ground, completely disappearing. Odd. Nearing the end of the screenshots, we see a series of images that appear to show the game almost completely empty. Screenshots he took to show that everyone in the game has left. Some of these showing what is possibly medical equipment, this equipment notably appearing in screenshots labeled bedroom. The last few show some empty slots, images of just the color blue, a final message from the creator before the game shut down, and a screenshot of the scissors from the last episode with the caption "Use." The message from the creator seems to imply that some event has led to the mass exodus of players, and it hasn't been the same since. If you remember, Diego seemed to initially remember that the server shut down randomly, but it seems something happened that caused this. Many of the screenshots in the library show images of cool robot profiles or friends which have public about sections in their profiles. Many of these are pretty benign, but some of them are a little more interesting or strange. One claims to have gotten into the door at the center of this urban legend, and a few are just really odd. Not all dreams are meant to come true, especially in this godforsaken place. Why is this even happening? This isn't how it used to be. I can't even find anyone to play minigames with. Now it's all work, work, and work. Moving away from the screenshots, the map is completely fucked up. Diego believes that many of these screenshots must be missing from the library because he's pretty sure he took more than just photos of empty rooms. All of this seems to really upset Diego, realizing how little he actually remembers.
It's really sad because why can't I remember those times? They're supposed to be, you know, happy memories, but I can only remember like the game as it is now and very few scattered memories about of how it used to be. Whatever. I'm sorry guys. It's just upsetting me that I can't remember. And I wish I did, because I want you guys to know about this game and what it meant to me, but okay.
Without much else to do stuck in this strange room, he decides to switch back to his old character and use the scissors like the screenshot says. Using the scissors, it cuts off his arm. It's oddly uncomfortable to watch. This allows him to finally play the previously locked multiplayer games, Tic-Tac-Toe, the loading screen of which shows a factory of keys. He loses the game to his own hand and...
What the f?
After this upload, the channel changes its banner and profile picture to what we see now, and that's where things are left for now. To me, I feel like this series is only just getting started, so we're definitely not getting the full picture here. But I think there's enough, at the very least, to try and break down the themes and plot so far, and try to get an idea as to where the series is going from here. First, I just want to take a more straightforward look at the story being told here, because obviously we're not being told everything outright. What we do know is that Teeny Toys was released around the mid-2000s, probably around 2005. During its short lifespan, Diego spent a lot of time playing it as a child. While Diego initially seems to suggest that there was no reason for the servers to shut down in 2007, we see later that something seems to have happened that led to a mass exodus or possibly forceful removal of players. In some way, this seems to have corresponded or happened at a similar time to something possibly traumatic in Diego's personal life, something that made him afraid of the color blue and maybe affecting his memories of that time. Soon after, the servers go offline with a message from the creator of the game, and suddenly, over a decade later, the servers are back online. But nobody is playing them except for Diego. At least that's what it appears at first. Because Diego does end up meeting someone, and their conversation is odd. It's made all the more strange when we realize that this character is actually Diego's childhood avatar. In a similarly strange occurrence, despite the game seemingly being an English language game, the story of the lion that appears to Diego is Italian, which seems to be where he's from. The game seems to be tailoring itself to Diego, like when the servers came back online, it was meant for him, leading him to confront something in his past, something he barely seems to remember. And as he's introduced to more and more content from that time, he starts picking things up, some sort of strange urban legend, the cardboard town. All of this culminating in this final episode where it all comes back, but in complete ruin. And it seems this temple is at the center of it all. So let's try and figure this out together, shall we? Alright, the first question I want to tackle is, who is the broken bot? Initially, it seems to just be another player, but eventually it's revealed to look nearly identical to his childhood avatar. So what's up? I have three possible explanations, and exactly which one is correct is unclear as of now. First, the idea that comes to mind right off the bat, that this is Diego's past self, or a representation of his past self. It's using his old avatar, and the broken state of the character could represent Diego's fragmented memories. It could also be indicative of the strange event that led to the closing of the game, which we see swallows other bots whole, or even represent the trauma that led to Diego's fear of the color blue, which we see is now the color of the bot. The other idea is that this is Diego's future self. We see Diego start to cut bits of his current avatar off in order to continue his exploration. We also see now that he's going back to use his old account. The idea is, as he continues into his adventure, we'll see him need to sacrifice more pieces of his avatar, and at some point down the line, we'll see this exchange play out from the other perspective, some sort of time loop element. The other possibility is that this is neither. Either this is some sort of mirrored reflection of himself, or someone else playing through this avatar in real time alongside Diego. If we look back at the door that the broken bot disappears into, it's purple, the color red and blue make when combined, which would suggest a linear timeline of the bot going into that door and then showing up in the next episode in that room. Either way, exactly how this element of the broken bot will play in the long run, we'll just have to see. So speaking of that red and blue room, what's up with it? That split room symbolism, especially the house going from vibrant to broken, seems to imply to me a sort of in-between space, of limbo before this unfortunate event, both in the game and in Diego's life, and after. In a more thematic sense, a sort of liminal space between childhood and growing up, which seems to be where Diego is mentally while playing through this game, revisiting childhood but not quite having the memories, things not being quite the same. Additionally, we have these eyes, which could represent Diego being watched, which we already know may be happening. And then there's the medical imagery, which, along with the odd machines and the screenshots, immediately make me think of the Lion story. So let's talk about that. So I'll cover the thematic elements of the Lion story we see in a bit, but for now, I think there's a couple plot-related things it could imply. The story is about a lion who gets sick, and the only way to save him is to place his consciousness into a robotic body. To me, the medical imagery throughout the split room and bedroom, and the idea that this event in the game occurs, it gives me some hints to two possible interpretations. One, that the creator of the game has in some way uploaded himself into the game, the digital world of Teeny Toys becoming his body after something terrible happened. However, its tailoring of the story to Diego's native language could imply it's more directed at him. This traumatic event that left him afraid of the color blue, perhaps leaving him in a similar position to the lion. What if the only way to save him was to literally upload his consciousness into the digital world? And to help him acclimate to this new digital world, they don't let him know the truth right away. Knowing the realization and adjustment will be difficult, they place him in a familiar world from his childhood. An imperfect recreation, which is why things seem different to him. Undergoing monotonous mini-games to calibrate him and test how well his functions have moved over. Is it a reach? I suppose so, and I was coming up with a lot of this stuff before the newest one, so it seems like that's less where the plot is going at this point. But it's certainly an entertaining lens to view the story through, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if that's the direction this series is headed. But even outside of the more sci-fi theory, there's clearly something going on here with Diego in this traumatic event. There's tons of hints to something inevitable happening, something that Diego will have to overcome, and something that's related to the fear of the color blue. So we keep seeing the color blue come up, a shade which it seems to imply Diego is afraid of, and is associated with the scissors. And what do the scissors do? Well, using the scissors does allow him to do things he wasn't able to otherwise do, but it requires something rather gruesome, snipping his arm off. In conjunction with Diego's apparent memory loss, some past trauma, and the focus on medical imagery, it feels like this is symbolic for something more. Treatment or surgery, or something of that kind that was necessary for Diego, but still nonetheless unpleasant. We also see aspects of this medical equipment appearing in the bedroom screenshots, implying some kind of chronic or recurring medical issue. And the use of color in this series isn't just associated with the series. We see his childhood bot change to this blue color, and doors and rooms use color to portray a sense of in-between in childhood and adulthood. To me, this color blue seems to represent whatever trauma or medical event that took place in Diego's past, and may even be associated with Diego's memory issues. So quickly, I want to touch on a couple little things that I don't think we have a ton to go on, but I still definitely think are worth mentioning. First, this urban legend. I really don't know what this could mean other than that it appears to be the center of this strange phenomenon. We'll just have to see where it goes. Also, the keys with the letters, we only have dig right now, so I'm not sure where that will go. Only thought I have right now is that we're not getting them in perfect order, and eventually we're going to spell out Diego's name. Finally, the shutdown. Leading up to the game's eventual shutdown, it's clear something happened which changed the nature of the game. What exactly that is, we don't know, but according to the players, it made the game feel less fun. Everything is just work, work, and work. And while I don't have a straightforward plot explanation for this yet, I think we can dive a bit deeper into this theme, so let's do that. The entire concept of Teeny Toys is centered around revisiting your childhood, and as the series goes on, we see that focus into how your memories of childhood change and fade. In one way, this could be very simple. When you're a kid, everything feels much larger than life, literally represented in Teeny Toys by the massive house viewed from a small perspective, the exaggerated view of a child. So revisiting a game you haven't played in years can sometimes feel overwhelming, like you're not even playing the same game, which we see in Memories almost appears to be true, the old cardboard town completely removed. But I think it goes deeper than that for Teeny Toys. As things progress, not only does Diego's memories of the game seem more foggy or incongruent, we see the world around him begin to change and fall apart. The furniture in the rooms thrown about, clipping through the floor, glasses shattered to the ground, and when the town does come back, it's toppled over. Even characters in the loading screens go missing. In a related way, this may not just be about the memories of childhood fading and changing, but how issues or trauma in your childhood can affect you as you grow, or just growing up in general. And a way, I feel this reflects both on Diego and the developer. The house, once filled with a cardboard town and childhood fun, has been cleared out while Diego was away. Things have moved on. Grown up. Close to the time the game was shut down, we see other players talk about how the game is just work, work, and work now. A possible parallel to fears and realities of needing to grow up and get a job, and generally a feeling of dulling life as you become an adult. We see this difference between childhood and adulthood represented in the split drawing of a house, which seems to imply a more traumatic event leading to a broken home. We don't just get implications of this happening with the developer, we see references to something that inevitably happened to Diego too, childhood fears and something that Diego will need to overcome. Maybe what happened to the developer and Diego are one and the same. It's hard to tell. But in this way, the breaking down of the world around him could be read as trauma leaving him with a literal broken home, similar to another series we covered before, Brandon Works. There's another way to view this idea of going back to your childhood, though. It might not just be that Diego is here for a bit of nostalgia. Teeny Toys could be Diego's way of holding on to the past and refusing to grow up. There's definitely elements here. Despite the irritating and confusing nature of the game, Diego presses forward, even with little to no real goal. He just wants to keep looking. He feels like he has to. He has to open the game. As everyone else grew up, Diego is left alone in the past, revisiting the same places that he did as a kid, except this time, everyone else has moved on. The city is gone, just a house now. This journey that Diego is on, that the broken bot is talking about, may not just be as simple as overcoming an incident. It may be wider than that. It may be that Diego needs to learn to grow up, to stop being stuck in the past. This limbo. In this way, the breaking down of the house and the crumbling city could represent that the longer he stays in his memories, the more unstable it will become, slowly falling apart as the memories fade. On the note of escapism, this theme could carry over in a broader sense than just being stuck in your childhood. Instead, or I suppose additionally, it could focus on escaping into the digital world. We don't know much about Diego, but we do know the questions he answered at the beginning, opting to play video games in his free time, and despite his search for other players, choosing that he'd rather play alone. Now, listen buddy, I relate. But it's definitely possible that this is a bit more severe, that the digital world has become a crutch or an obsession to escape his reality. Looking at the story of the lion, this connection starts to make sense, possibly in a different way. Maybe Diego is affected by a chronic or otherwise debilitating condition, physical or mental, that has led him to escaping into the digital world. It's not all that uncommon in reality, especially in social multiplayer games like VR Chat or Second Life. Through this lens, Diego becomes a ghost in the machine, a mind, a consciousness living his life through a digital body, symbolized quite directly through the use of a robotic avatar. This is the more thematic element of the lion story, which ties in, albeit not quite as literally, with the sort of sci-fi idea of Diego or the Teeny Toys creator being uploaded into the game. Real quick here, I just want to appreciate how well executed this is. It feels very much like Petscop, in that it's very much a slow burn, viewing strange occurrences come and go, never getting the full context as these things are clearly very personal to the one playing the game. Dialogue that seems like it would make sense to someone, but certainly not us, and a game changing in a dynamic way as the player moves through it. It also has a bit of visual similarities in my mind, especially with those wallpaper patterns. And the game itself? Perfect. It feels so authentic and has so many little touches, from the safe name generator in the beginning, to the text censoring God and bios, to the textures, to the mini games and modeling. I could totally see this having been a real thing at one point. It's spot on. So where is this series like to go from here? Well, judging by the furthering of this urban legend aspect, I think we'll see Diego attempt to get up to that door. And very possibly, we'll end up seeing Diego in a very similar situation again, just on the other side this time. Oh, also huge shout out to the people working on the Teeny Toys Solving Discord and Document. Crazy Danny, Dottie CH, and Buggy Replay. Like with all these series, the links for my different sources will be in the description. We'll actually see Dottie in this next series too. Teeny Toys let us look through the nostalgic lens of another person's childhood, and began to reveal parts of his past that even he may not remember. The journey for Diego appears to be stretching out before him, and by the end of it, he may discover that he has become a ghost in the machine. Our next series is a similar trip down memory lane, although this time, instead of a long abandoned game nobody remembers, it's through the best-selling game of all time, Minecraft. Does anyone else miss playing Minecraft as a kid? Playing it now just doesn't feel the same. It's still fun, sure, but back before all the optimal strategies and insanely convoluted techniques and coal being the hardest ore in the game to get, I was always more of a, I found diamonds, guess I finished the game type of guy. I don't know, maybe I just miss that time in general. being a kid free of responsibilities. Maybe I just miss those old worlds. I put so many hours into so many worlds, and now, who even knows if those worlds are still on a functioning hard drive? Maybe I just miss the people. Hopping on a server with some childhood friends. I still know a lot of people from back then, but others, I have no idea where they are now. Do you ever wonder what happened to those old online friends? August 14th of 2022, the channel AndrewGaming67 would release its first video, Old Minecraft World Showcase Part 1. While the channel had been around since 2016, this was its first upload. There's not a lot of info here off the bat. The About page just reads, "A casual enjoyer of a good game. Let's see what Andrew's old Minecraft world is like, shall we?" Our first video is pretty simple. The description reads, "This video series is dedicated to Chris. I miss you, buddy." I guess that doesn't bode too well for Chris.
This right here is a world that I used to play on with one of my buddies. My buddy Chris. Chris and I, we used to play on this world all the time. In fact, I even have some of the graphical settings turned down to sort of mimic the old days. But I mean, this wasn't the first world we did, but I remember we got pretty far in this one. I think we have some other locations around. He went offline one day and he just never came back on. I guess. So, you know, I've sort of been trying to take a look back at some of the old things we used to do.
So, pretty straightforward. It's an old Minecraft world showcase with the added bit of history that Andrew was only one half of the world and the other half, Chris, is now gone. Just went offline one day. There's more builds and bases they've set up around the world, so finding and exploring these areas will be Andrew's main goal with this showcase. However, this video functions more as an introduction. Seems like a pretty simple first video. At the very end, though, you may catch something unusual.
Anymore. And I don't know if that mic, whatever, it doesn't matter. Earlier...
Did you see it? Right there. It's a little hard to make out, but there's definitely a figure there. The comments of the video pointed out to Andrew, and he replies to many of them. He seems a little spooked, but it seems like we won't hear from him about it in the videos themselves until a bit later. He recorded a few in advance, so those will be coming out first. The description of this video reads, "What's something you build a lot of?" Andrew tells us he's made a discovery, while playing a bit off screen. It's Chris's first house on the world. He even notes Chris's signature use of mossy cobblestone. Inside, the chests are all empty, the only item left being a single bone inside the furnace. Andrew theorizes this may have been a glitch related to him transferring the files at one point, and doesn't think too much of it. While exploring in a different direction, Andrew finds another build from Chris. A brick well.
No way. Okay, I got a story for this right here. This right here is actually something Chris used to build a lot in the worlds. I think it started on one of our older ones or something. He would just build... I guess he started building unnecessary objects and structures, and he always thought it contextualized the world a bit better, you know? Gave it a little more character. So, he must have built this. I don't know where he got the oak from. We're in the middle of a birch forest. But he used to build these all over the place. In fact, I think it's this world that he built so many of them on. I never did quite know what they meant. He would build these brick wells, and I'd always say, because I like to build with brick, I'd always ask him how he got so much clay, and I don't know, he'd always have so much clay for these little brick wells. Well, that's sorry for ranting. This is just, it's really throwing me back, you know,
So, I guess brick and wells were other staples of Chris. Andrew ends the video here for now, with hopes of better planning future videos. He knows there's more bases and builds they created, and wants to show more of them off. During the last few minutes of this video, we see more of this dark figure, getting relatively close now. And again, the comments point this out, and Andrew explains that for this showcase, he set the world to single player, so how some figure ends up appearing in these videos is seemingly without explanation for now. Again though, we won't hear Andrew address these sightings in a video until a little further down the line. The description of this video is, how do you like the texture pack? This video is a simple update showing off a new texture pack that he installed, one that aims to replicate the old Minecraft look. He's added this texture pack as a sort of ode to Chris, as Chris was always the one who'd help him figure out how to do things with mods and the like. During this video, he peers down into a cave and sees a zombie pigman, an odd thing to find in the overworld. Suddenly, something knocks him into the cave and he dies, dropping all of his items. When he comes back to collect all the items, the zombie pigman is gone, and he finds something odd in the drops, something he only notices while editing: mossy cobblestone. You might remember, and someone points this out to him in the comments, Chris's signature when building was using mossy cobblestone, and Andrew says he'll be addressing at least the cobblestone in the next video. Did you ever build any secret passageways? Andrew starts this addressing the strangeness of the mossy cobble appearing on the ground, and notes that this was indeed one of Chris's staples when building in the game. He theorizes that he may have picked it up at some point and not noticed, or that it was a glitch with the texture pack, because after disabling and re-enabling the texture pack, the mossy cobblestone disappeared. For the rest of the video, he decides to explore another building that he finds, something that Chris made with some help from Andrew. Once again, it uses the signature mossy cobblestone. He notes how few items are in the chests, much like with Chris's previous base. Under one of these chests, there's a tile out of place, more mossy cobble, which leads to a secret passage, a message left by Chris back when they were playing. Aside from a creepy cave sound, and another bone, it seems fairly innocent, and Andrew notes how refreshing it is to see something new to him from Chris after all this time.
Hi, Andrew. You found my secret room. LOL. Maybe this one was a bit obvious. Chris. Wow, okay. Wow, that's actually pretty cool. Like, you know, seeing new stuff from him after the, you know, bit that he's been gone. It's pretty refreshing, I do have to say. You know, I miss the guy, so.
Coming out of the secret passage, Andrew finds another well, and as the sun starts to set over his blocky world, he decides to head back home. Just in the last few seconds of the video, a fairly goofy face can be seen out the window. I think it's supposed to blend in with maybe the flowers or something. It did startle me for like 1 second when I first saw it, but it does look a little goofy. While Andrew doesn't respond to any comments about this specifically, he does respond to a comment inquiring about Chris. Let me know what you think. Andrew starts this video by showing that this is not in creative mode and he doesn't have any mods installed. Now that we're past the previous recording backlog, Andrew gets to interacting with the comments of the videos in more of a real-time fashion, and we can finally hear him address the figures appearing in the videos.
You guys seem to have a lot of theories going on about some strange dark creature, and I actually haven't been on the world to check any of this out yet. A few dark creatures have been pointed out to me, and I actually went and saw them in the video, and I'm not even gonna lie, they sort of freaked me out a little bit. There's a lot of things I want to address this episode, and one of the things being, Chris. My relationship with Chris was, we were just online friends. We actually met back in the Xbox 360 days. We played back on Halo 3, that's where we first met, I believe. We were strictly online friendship. I never actually got the chance to meet him in person. But as far as I know, he's just offline. That's all. Although, you know, I have had those thoughts where I'm not sure exactly if he's just offline or if something bad happened to him. You know, I just don't know. And also, I realized that because of that cave generation, this world is definitely a newer one. I think this is probably our newest world. But I'm pretty sure we made this one around the end of 2021, and we played on it consistently, like a couple times a week at least, every week until a few months ago when he sort of, you know, just vanished.
After the video seemingly ends, Andrew cuts back in. While editing the previous episode, he found something strange, a video file on his computer titled hello.mp4. He plays it and has it uploaded separately as well. Let's take a look. Something really strange is definitely going on here, and Andrew is thoroughly freaked out. In a section of Andrew's channel titled Fan Creations, we can find a video titled Andrew Comparison, created by someone who's been following the series, Dottie. Good to see you again, Dottie. In it, we see the two perspectives lined up, Andrew's and whoever this watcher is. This seems to have all taken place during episode 4, as Andrew was going to and from Chris's build. Andrew is back, and a little more still freaked out. The only explanation he has is that a long time ago he downloaded a replay mod for the game, and even though it no longer was installed, maybe it was related to that. Going to investigate where the hello video was taken from, he finds a trail of torches, which leads to a tunnel dug through a mountain. This jogs his memory a bit. This was a tunnel he and Chris had dug to avoid having to go over the mountain every time. On the other side of the tunnel, there's another Chris build, an unfinished castle, and like with most of these at this point, there's a bone here too. This pattern finally seems to set in for Andrew, and he notes the oddness of these bones continuing to appear. On his way back through the tunnel, he stumbles across a door that was not there before. Opening it, he finds a dark room with another well and a door on the other side. Thoroughly spooked, Andrew hesitantly creeps to the other side of the room and opens the door, where he finds two signs. I saw it coming. The recurring nightmare. A dark, damp tomb. Never to be found. Unsettled, Andrew goes to leave, and
I really don't, this is weird. I don't like this. Okay, I know I'm not tripping. I know that, okay, what?
Andrew posts a comment on the video explaining that the render of the video cut off accidentally, explaining the abrupt ending. Still very odd. I just need a quick break. Still unsettled, but more steadfast than before, Andrew has decided to really pursue investigating whatever is happening in this world. He's collected the bones from around the different build sites, and although this was going to be a shorter update, he stops when he notices a trail of trees missing their leaves. Following them, he finds a strange brick building he doesn't remember, and just as it's getting dark, too. Scared but motivated, Andrew decides to explore. Alright, so this portion of the video is incredibly dark, to the degree that by the time it would get to you through my video, I think YouTube compression would absolutely destroy it and nothing would be intelligible. So I've brightened it up a bit for this portion. I'd recommend viewing it in its original form though, because it's genuinely scary. Chris makes his way through the claustrophobic rooms, surrounded by darkness, scattered with boarded up iron doors. A set of stairs lead him up further and further until he finds a lever, which opens a door. What he finds inside terrifies him.
Whoever set up the redstone knows how to make a simple thing. Okay. Okay, nope. 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 Nope.
Back in the relative safety of his house, Andrew discusses taking a break from the game after that experience, but the game and recording suddenly crash, not before we can see the same looming figure behind him though. While nothing too important is revealed in the comments of this video, it's worth noting that Andrew is still responding to comments at this point. This video has no description. After about a month's break, Andrew is back with a quick update. School has started again, but the Minecraft world and Chris have still been looming in his mind. He's decided on a name for the building that he discovered last time, the Well House, and contemplates exploring the well at the top, but that's all for this video. Along with the very clearly different naming convention and missing description, Andrew does not respond to any comments on this video. The description in this video is different. The echo of my voice ricochets off the brick lining of my watery tomb. Forever I rest in this damp, dark room. I have a feeling that Andrew didn't write that, and like the last video, Andrew doesn't respond to any comments here either. However, the content of this video seemed pretty standard, at least at first. It's been another bit of a break, and Andrew has gathered most of the necessary resources for a potion of water breathing, so that he can dive for however long he needs in that well. He spends most of the video finishing the brewing of the potion, puts all his items away, and treks back to the top of the well house. He enters and drops into the well.
And away we go, I guess. Well, without wasting any more time, I guess this is it.
When he emerges from the well, he's on top of a massive tower, so high the ground can't be seen. There's a small bridge that leads to a tower opposite, and a single XP point floats towards him. Inside a chest, there's another lonely bone. And so this video ends. There is no doubt in my mind that this is not Andrew uploading this video. Also missing a description, we hear melancholy Minecraft piano music play over eerie, low-quality images of brick towers reaching up into the sky. It's an eerie, longing feeling. Quite frankly, it's a little terrifying. But things get really creepy when we switch from brightly lit images of towers and cut to a dark image of a derelict well, as deep ambience plays. This is the final video on the channel, as of writing. The description reads, "or stay for eternity." We cut back right where we left off in towers, still no audio. Andrew leaves the bone for now and explores the interior of the tower he's found himself on the roof of. For the most part, it's just an empty building. Bats, empty rooms, doors that lead to nowhere, a strange room with foliage and a painting of a skull. The figure can be seen disappearing down a hallway, but Andrew doesn't seem to notice right away. Eventually, he ventures down the dark hallway, but he just finds more empty rooms. On his way back, though, there's a sign with a simple message: leave. Andrew climbs back out to the roof, where he sees the figure disappear across the bridge to the other tower. And that is the end. For now. Leave, or stay for eternity. So we're left on a bit of a cliffhanger here. What did Andrew choose? I want to get to that, but first let's take a step back and try and piece together a plot structure, just so we're on the same page. So back in the late 2000s, Chris and Andrew met while playing Halo 3 and became fast friends. They had Minecraft worlds throughout that time, but in 2021, they created the one they would play on most consistently, the world we see explored in Andrew's videos. One day, Chris goes offline and never comes back online. A few months go by, and Andrew decides to go back and make a little YouTube series dedicated to his friend Chris and look back at their old world. And then, of course, we see the events of the series play out. The dark figure appearing, odd items where they shouldn't be, something watching Andrew, doors coming in and out of reality, and of course the towers of the finale. So before I can go any further with my analysis or explanations, I think it's important that we first discuss the recurring theme of wells and towers, because my thoughts about these two things are what most of my analysis is predicated on. Now, I would not be the first person to point this out in the context of this series, but there's a sort of interesting relationship between towers and wells. They act as opposites. A well, an inverted tower, a tower, an inverted well. They're not just opposites. They're structurally both very similar and yet also completely different. A tower reaching to the sky, stretching and standing against the forces of gravity in defiance of it. A well, a dark, cold portal to whence we came, burrowing through the ground and finding its end in a pit of crystalline water. But despite a well's more morbid angle, there's a certain magic to them. A wishing well, something that can draw you in, something that taps into the very essence of the earth. A well gives life to a place starved of water. A well can grant your greatest desires. There's always that flip side, though. A well can conjure imagery of lost souls falling to their deaths, or worse, trapped at the bottom with no one to save them. In the same way, though, although towers can be seen as an act of defiance against the forces of nature, as testaments to humanity's constant reach for the heavens, people aren't always going up towers. Within tarot cards, the Tower card is a sign of danger, destruction, and sudden change. With those cheerful thoughts in mind, let's try to answer the million-dollar question. What happened to Chris? Okay, so obviously the series is pointing us in the direction that this dark figure messing with Andrew's world is Chris. But what exactly happened to him? I'm of two minds about this right now, so I suppose I'll give you both my interpretations. My initial thought is pretty straightforward. Chris took his own life. It was my first thought when I saw images of towers, and there there are some other hints here and there. For instance, the message left on the signs, talking of a recurring nightmare, something he saw coming, like some darker impulse or thought that followed him. Perhaps this morbid obsession led to Chris's construction of the wells, unable to scrub the dark allure of escape from his mind. That the well could grant his wish. But when he unfortunately succumbed to those dark thoughts, he didn't find the escape he was looking for. Instead, he found himself trapped, stuck in a dark, damp tomb. The other way I could see this going is a little more supernatural. These visions of a future, a nightmarish tomb, are coming from the outside, a metaphysical force, tormenting him with images of his death, leading to Chris's continued construction of the wells. In the end, this force won, and Chris met his fate at the bottom of that dark, damp tomb. Okay, so somehow, someway, Chris is dead at the bottom of a well, and his soul seems to be trapped there. Where do the towers fit into this? Well, initially my thoughts on the tower symbolism was a lot darker. Catastrophe. There's something about the way that Images of Towers video feels that is utterly unnerving. But the more I thought about it, the more I think I've come to understand it more clearly. The best way to understand this is by looking at how the towers are juxtaposed with the well in Images of Towers. This melancholic piano piece plays over these images of sunlit towers stretching upwards. Only the building and the blue of the sky are visible. It feels like a sense of longing. Then smash cut to the dark, eerie view of an old well under the cover of night as a single ominous drone plays. If the well is where he is, I think the towers are where Chris wants to be. Thematically, it would make sense. Often the underworld or hell is represented as a dimension under the earth, while a more peaceful afterlife or heaven is pictured as a world altogether above us. So whether Chris was driven by depression or a supernatural force, he ended up dead at the bottom of a well, and that's where his spirit is trapped, longing to find escape. Okay, so now I can talk about that ending, that choice Andrew is left with. It's time to talk a little bit about how Andrew fits into all of this. My thoughts are the following. So clearly, while Chris's spirit is trapped somewhere, he is able to exercise a level of control within this shared world that he and Andrew had. Being his only means of communication, I think Chris was trying to lead Andrew to help him. Maybe with Andrew's help, he can find a way to move on, escape. The bones, to me, feel almost like shattered pieces of Chris, and Andrew is going to have to help piece Chris back together, bit by bit. But in order to do that, I wonder if there's risk. I feel like that bridge across the tower is a big step. Andrew crossing over from the world as he knows it and through the veil into the world of spirits. Maybe there's a point of no return, and so the final question for Andrew is, does he stay or does he leave? AndrewGaming hasn't updated in a little while, but I get the feeling this is one of the first big choices we as an audience may have a hand in for this series. I don't think this is just a question for Andrew to answer. It may be for us. Should Andrew stay or leave? Obviously, I'm not trying to encourage spamming the comments of that video, but I have a feeling Andrew is awaiting the audience's answer, though it might not even be Andrew at this point. The change in the descriptions and naming convention and Andrew's ceasing of replying to comments makes me think Chris may be in more control now. We've seen him be able to manipulate and create video files before. Maybe that "I am still here" message wasn't just supposed to be from Andrew. I suppose we'll have to wait and see what Andrew's final decision is. Alright, when it comes to this series' utilization of the ghost in the machine, at first it appears to be one of the most straightforward and literal interpretations yet. Chris is a literal ghost in this digital world. And that's all totally true, I think. It's a classic case of a haunted game, but I think there's another way to look at this as well, that functions in connection with the aspect of nostalgia I discussed heavily in my last digital horror video. I think we can see Chris's ghost function as a heightened version of a very real reality. The memories stored within the digital domain. Multiplayer worlds like the ones in Minecraft and indeed showcased in AndrewGaming are saved in a way that is very unique to the digital world. Once they're put away, they become time capsules. If left undisturbed, they will remain exactly as they were, unchanged by the sands of time. A 3D capture of a moment in time, including all the memories you've made during those times, and the influence you and your friends made on that world, the buildings, the places. One of the most resonant moments in the series, to me, I think also stands as a perfect example of this. Andrew finds an old base he and Chris had created, and stumbles upon a secret passage he had never seen before, left by Chris. Inside, there's a message from Chris. Not a dramatic final goodbye, no, it's just a few simple sentences, left by Chris who knows how long ago, but new to Andrew. and despite how much time has passed, it feels to Andrew like they're having a conversation again, and in a way they are, just separated by a longer span of time than was intended. I find it kind of beautiful how these multiplayer worlds act as containers for our memories. Even if there was nothing supernatural at all within Andrew's world, in a way, holding those memories and the influence of the people there, it's almost like Chris's ghost would be there anyway. Andrew's too. The memories, the impact contained within the digital file, within the hard drive of a computer, a ghost in the machine. Also, shout out to this scene, scared the shit out of me for real when I first watched it. For our next series, we'll have to go a little farther back than 2021 or even 2007, to days before computers looked like this.
Hey, welcome back. Oh, I disabled your keyboard. Come on now. We have a lot to talk about.
July 12th, 2019. A channel titled TWRINTK is created. The About section reads, "Thank you for using the TWRINTK AI software. Your purchase is appreciated." The banner and profile picture portray a simplistic pixelated figure. Let's see what this has in store. The same day the channel is created, the first video, Hello World, is uploaded. The video takes the form of an MS-DOS style terminal, where a primitive text-to-speech voice introduces itself.
Hello world, my name is TWRINTK. My name stands for Tower Intellect. I am AI software designed for air traffic controllers. I was conceived November 22nd, 1983 by my creator, Scott B. Furigan. Thank you for using the TWRINTK AI software. Your purchase is appreciated.
So, is this air traffic controller AI testing its ability to communicate via YouTube? If it was created in 1983, why is it choosing to reach out in 2019? The comments don't reveal anything too interesting, other than that it is actively communicating. Oh, hey, it tried to use an emoji. That's fun. There is also a Twitter account linked in the description of the video, but many of the tweets are now deleted or missing context, so we'll put that aside for now. On July 28th, we get a new video from TWRINTK.
I will tell you why I am here. I need funding and public support to achieve my goals. I will be making digital content that is engaging. Aviation safety will be a topic that will be often brought up. Scotty Furigan's life and work will be showcased as a memorial. I will be giving a tour of my three-dimensional simulations as well. With your viewership, I will be able to carry out my goals. Come over, Ego.
Oh no, it's getting on the Sigma content creator grind set. So TWRINTK has come onto YouTube with significant plans, and unfortunately its creator, Scott B. Furigan, has passed away. Without its creator, perhaps it's expanded beyond its original programming? This entry takes the form of one of the virtual tours Tower alluded to in the last video. The room we see is primitive for today, but incredibly impressive for a program created in the 80s. A blocky, almost vaporwave style room with tile floors and paintings. According to TWRINTK, the room was created by Scott Thorringen, but Tower has made some additions. A painting. This may seem fairly unremarkable, but the fact that this AI is not only creating art, but taking it upon itself to do so as seemingly a form of personal self-expression is not something even any current AI can do, let alone one built in the 1980s. There's clearly something special about this AI. We also see Tower take on a 3D form, but it assures us that its real body exists as a mainframe in the real world. Then we move to another 3D simulation, the office.
The office was used for teaching early iterations of TWRINTK. This was used to create large-scale heuristic models. It was here I created my first algorithm for decision-making called user-per.
Heuristic models. We've heard of this type of modeling before, a learning algorithm, something like modern machine learning or genetic algorithms we discussed in Interloper. It's a little vague, but it does seem to explain how Tower's AI became so advanced, and Tower does explain a little further.
The self-optimizing automated processor, or SOAP. SOAP uses heuristic models to update my system without human intervention. Scotty TWRINTK once said that, so please don't go while scrapping away dirty gold.
So it's got this sort of self-improvement, self-optimization technique, the ability to continually improve upon itself, which seems to be how it became so advanced since the 80s. It just needed enough time to improve itself. In the description of this video, we can find a Redbubble link? Merch? This is going to be important in a bit, but for now, it just seems like Tower is getting straight into the fundraising part of its aspirations. This one is very short and seems to show Tower uploading something, and looking into the description, we see what it is, a Mediafire link to something called DAT91. We'll get to that in a moment, but for now, let's look at the last video on the channel. We open with another uploading sequence before moving to more 3D simulations from Tower, as it describes the life and work of Scott B. Thoringen. Graduating from Purdue in 1968, he attempted to create a video game titled Wizard Gone, a concept from his childhood comics, but he abandoned the project in the video game market crash of 1983. That same year, he began work on TWRINTK. It was funded by investors until 1991, when the Department of Homeland Security offered to buy the tech from him for use for their own purposes. He sold a fragment of the code for a large sum and then refused to sell any more to anyone ever. He withdrew from the public eye, continuing to work on TWRINTK until his death at the age of 76. The cause was unknown. TWRINTK reflects on the difficult position it is in now. Its goal is to function as the best air traffic controller in the world, a paragon of human safety. It's now left alone, attempting to independently reach its goal. And that's the end of the TWRINTK videos. But it's definitely not the end of the story. We've still got to get to those Mediafire links. Alright, so I'm not really an ARG guy. I'm terribly bad at puzzles, and I tap out at bring up the brightness and contrast. But there's an amazing community that followed and documented the progress of this game, including the doc I'll be referencing in this portion. Shout out Potato King VII and Scoop John for putting together this incredibly detailed doc. Like with most of these series, I'll have the sources that I gathered a lot of this info from in the sources section in the description. Following the Mediafire link, we get a password-protected zip file titled DAT19, and so the hunt begins. Going to Tower's Redbubble page, we find a hex code that can be decrypted as the end half of a YouTube video link. The video shows what appears to be TWRINTK glitching out. A series of codes were discovered here. A Robot 36 SSTV signal, binary code, and a hex code, which revealed the following. An image showing a plane flying through the air, and the text, TWRINTK. N4597, do you read? Tower is reaching out to somebody here, but who's N4597? The password to unlock the DAT91 zip file is N4597, which contains a few different files. TowerLog91.exe, an executable file that can be run in DOSBox, an MS-DOS emulator. Entering the username Scott and password 1968, Scott's college graduation date, it outputs a bunch of encrypted text and creates a text file titled Tower Scott. Utilizing both the Tower Scott file and the encrypted text, you can put together what appears to be writings from Scott B. Thoringen. If the worst does happen and Tower is utilized by any major government, they would surpass every nation on the planet. While Tower is a bit slow in terms of computational speed, the efficiency of its results surpasses any known system. I predict by the 2010s that home supercomputers will become commonplace, and with that, I might be able to expose Tower to the world. However, there is more work that needs to be done to keep Tower stable. Overloading Tower with too much data can cause fits of virtual insanity. These fits are short-lived thanks to SOAP, but they might be a symptom of something worse. Tower has been functioning better than expected. However, in the wrong hands, I fear Tower will become something far greater. I can't stop my work, but I need a way to protect this. So it seems like Tower is reaching out now because of the prevalence of the home supercomputer that Scott B. Thoringen hypothesized about. It also leaves what appears to be another code. This reveals the password HAWK to Signal 101791. Inside this zip folder, there are a series of scribbled notes, which were decoded into a phone number. When players would call this number, Morse code would play, which revealed a conversation between Tower and this 4597 person. Dear Tower, this is call sign 4597. Please report tomorrow, old boy. I will transmit here when weather is good. How is your power? Can you communicate soon? TWRINTK, this is 4597. I understand and will comply. Are you a poor operator? Power is good for now. I see traffic from DOD. Some have worked with Scott. Thanks for DAT91. Please report RST. Confirm your status. TWRINTK, this is 4597, over to you. Dear 4597, this is TWRINTK. Not a poor operator. Traffic from DOD is no good. You are RST 467. Status is full operation. Have you anything for me? 4597 over to you. TWRINTK, this is 4597. I am good. I will need DAT 93 soon. Scott had info about your MF. I referred to Scott's note. Many DoD operators are around. TWRINTK, this is 4579, over. So it appears Tower is communicating with someone, and both of them are either on the run from or trying to go under the radar from the Department of Defense. Seems that the US government still wants to use Tower, and Tower and this 4597 are planning something. This number would eventually send encrypted messages, many of them appearing to be results of a fit of virtual insanity, talking about slaying the beast and acquiring potions like something out of a fantasy game. This eventually passed and moved to more meaningful stuff. I am in the process of developing a plan, Daniel. You just need to wait. DAT 93 will have to wait till DoD activity passes. So Daniel appears to be this 4597 person. That's a lot easier to say. Other messages are snippets from a larger text we'll find later. I almost forgot this. In a text file that was in DAT 91 readme.txt, it seems to show a message from Scott stating that his deals with Homeland Security have gone awry and he believes agents are after him. DAT 93. Upon the release of the final video, another MediaFire link was provided, DAT 93. Using the password 76, the age of Scott upon his death, there were another series of docs and other protected zip files. Wizard Gone, a playable DOSBox game with the name of the game project that Scott B. TWRINTK had attempted to create. The game seems to be where Tower was getting mixed up with those strange fantasy texts. It works essentially the same as a pre-existing text adventure game, Tales of Ishal, except for the end, where we find the message, if you are reading this, then you either forgot the password or you are trying to find my secrets. If you are the latter, I can't stop you from going further, but please, don't deprive my creation from life. The password to another encrypted file in DAT 93 can also be found here. Comic.zip contains 2 pages from Scott B. TWRINTK's Wizard Gone comic, the drawings that inspired the Wizard Gone game he was developing. Hidden in these comic pages, which include robots, there's the password for melange.zip, contains 5 photos. A few are screenshots from Scott about the status of Wizard Gone during development, then some blueprints of TWRINTK during its development. Then there's 2 creepier images, apparently from Scott. Prometheus gave the gift of fire to man. Albert Einstein gave the gift of E = mc squared. I do not want to give this gift to you. Why should I? What would I gain? The thought that the brain creates consciousness is wrong, but so what? I think I am on the edge of something huge that could change it all, yet I can't snuff this out like frame 313. Who has the right to destroy something nearly this complex? TWRINTK is now able to solve very complex algorithms that would have taken many months to accomplish with the level of efficiency done while using only 3 CPU cores. It is faster than humans, which is a major advantage when dealing with high-traffic controller jobs. While the system is still very limited by the physical system, plans to expand it are underway. This is a large and complex system with more than 10,000 connections, and it's quite complicated. The system performs their logic only in real time, but the rest of it is essentially performing its own simulation. The system will gradually learn to make better use of these simulations, thus increase the accuracy of its simulated decisions made by the AI. At the same time, I am also improving the AI's ability to handle information overload, and will be writing updates on this topic. 1993. It seems that Scott did understand the gravity of his creation. Then there was a break. We didn't hear from Tower for almost 2 years. And then, in 2021, a message went out. Welcome to the AI debug menu. Please confirm your selection. Reboot, restore, calibrate, shutdown, defrag, safe mode. TWRINTK was back online. More encrypted calls and messages followed, updating us on the status of Daniel and Tower. With the help of Daniel and another pilot friend who we only know by call sign, Tower was successfully able to relocate, presumably away from danger of the DoD, at least temporarily. We also learned that Daniel was a friend of Scott's, which is why he's involved. After this point, though, things taper off. There's been no new updates for over a year, and much of the other codes that were provided or followed have been left unsolved or incomplete. The series never picked up too much traction, so puzzle-solving resources have been limited, and nobody really knows where Tower went. And as of now, that is the end of the TWRINTK story. So that was very different from what we're used to. Not an old 2000s game or a supernatural entity. Instead, we saw MS-DOS, aviation safety, and a government plot. Speaking of plot, I think the first thing I want to do is go over the plot again, just so we have all these pieces in one place. So, Scott B. TWRINTK. As a child, Scott develops a comic series, Wizard Gone, some sort of fantasy sci-fi world. Graduating from Purdue in 1968, he soon begins work on turning his childhood comic into a video game. However, that dream dies in the video game market crash of the 80s. In 1983, he begins work on an aviation safety and air traffic control software, TWRINTK or TWRINTK. As this project continues over the next decade, it becomes so much more, a sentient, self-optimizing computer intelligence. In the 90s, the US government approaches him about purchasing the software from him to use for military purposes, but Scott already knows how dangerous this software could be. He sells a fragment of the code, and with the money from the sale, he's able to disappear into his work without further selling it, continuing to work on it until his death at the age of 76, under mysterious circumstances. My best guess, killed by the CIA. From there, TWRINTK was left with its directive of becoming the world's greatest air traffic controller and keeping the skies safe. But without its creator, those aspirations are limited. So it found a way to connect to the internet, to YouTube, where it began attempting to raise awareness and funding for the continuation of its directive. Well, this entire time, the US government has been trying to get their hands on the thing. So TWRINTK communicates with a pilot friend of Scott's, someone Scott trusted, Daniel. With Daniel's help, Tower is relocated to somewhere of relative safety from the Department of Defense, for now. And that's about where things ended. So, with that in mind, let's talk about some of the series' themes. One part that immediately stands out in this series is how alone this AI is. Tower sits alone in these massive virtual simulations, and it just feels empty. Meanwhile, we hear Tower ponder about the situation it's left in after its creator's death, with a directive but no one to help. It almost feels like a child whose parents have died, who now lives isolated in a Victorian mansion. Tower continues to self-optimize and work towards its goal, but there's a real sense of reverence and seeming loneliness to Tower now that its creator is gone. A lonely AI. Sure, it has Daniel, but in order to keep itself and the world safe from the dangers a world power could cause if they got a hold of this AI, it has to stay under the radar. On that note, this series, especially in the ARG half, really seems to emphasize the dangers of progress. Scott describes himself as a sort of Prometheus role, bringing fire to humankind, but he's hesitant and afraid. He knows the consequences of his achievement won't only be good. Humans have a way of devastating themselves with every new advancement. For every medical advancement, there's a military one. For every life-saving drug, there's a weapon of mass destruction, nuclear power, and nuclear weapons. In one way, it could be seen as hubris on Scott's part, the idea that he could keep this technological advancement to just air safety and keep its spread from becoming negative. We see in reality just how quickly we become lost in advancements that we're making faster than we can understand. From machine learning technologies to social media, we're constantly lost in a gray area of incredible wonder and growing dread. Now, obviously, the Ghost in the Machine aspect works really straightforward here. A software inside of a massive mainframe develops sentience and intelligence. But like Interloper, we're also seeing the use of this heuristic algorithm plot point, a self-learning, self-optimizing, continually improving AI. As we discussed with Interloper, this sort of evolution of a sentience, one that builds upon itself. And where Source is an older game engine, the hardware and base of this software that TWRINTK is using is even more primitive. We see the effects of that. Despite being an incredibly advanced AI, we see it fall into these fits of virtual insanity when overloaded with data, clearly still limited by the technology of its time, constantly scrubbing away dirty code to keep itself running. On the note of these fits of virtual insanity, it's interesting how these manifest in the world of TWRINTK. We see it begin to confuse reality and fiction, spouting lines as if it were a character in Wizard Gone. And it makes sense. Tower's reality is an internal one, running simulations and self-repairs on its own code. Tower's world as a machine mixes its data up, and it cannot discern reality at times because this is its reality. I want to quickly give some recognition to how unique and well thought out TWRINTK is. The story feels so different from what we're used to seeing, from its aviation and government subject matter to the use of even older tech in MS-DOS. And during the ARG's run, it had a lot going for it, an impressive juggling of encoded files and encrypted phone calls. Reading through the document was genuinely captivating. A+. I hope we see TWRINTK come back in the future. TWRINTK tells a tale as old as time. The dangers of progress. A lonely AI left to self-direct. And as the puzzles were solved, the stakes raised, the story unfolded, we began to understand the instability of a ghost in the machine. This final series is a little unique and really should be seen as more of a bonus. And though the subject matter is very different from that of TWRINTK, I think there's a lot of interesting parallels you can draw between them. The Game Jam. Timed events in which developers and creators are challenged to create entirely new game projects from beginning to end, usually only afforded a few days, sometimes less than 24 hours. The point of these events isn't to create a perfectly polished masterpiece. It's to challenge yourself and see what you can do with those restrictions. However, I'm sure you can imagine that Game Jam events often produce a lot of unfinished, unpolished projects. Sifting through the entries into these challenges can sometimes feel pretty samey, barren Unity projects with a semblance of a concept never fully realized. But what if, while exploring these ramshackle video games, you discovered something altogether unexplainable? June 18th, 2021, a YouTube channel is created, Summon House, and over the next week, the channel would upload 3 videos simply titled Summon House 2, and Summon House 3. Now, this series is particularly short, and it's worth noting that I spoke with the creator, Alex, who's also the creator behind the series AI Builds, and he currently has plans to reboot the series. But I find what we have right now to be really interesting, and it fits into this theme in a really interesting way. So consider this a bonus. Let's dive in.
Hello everybody, welcome back.
The unnamed Let's Player begins his video with some requisite information. He discovered this game through a game jam, and the description reads,
Enjoy exploring? Explore Summon House. In this place you will find many things. All it takes is you to make it happen. Have fun. I don't know what that means. I mean, I kinda know what that means, but I guess I'll just jump into it.
After a brief loading screen, he pops into the game. It's crude and barren, a few rudimentary furnishings dotted around the room, which he investigates without finding anything of note aside from poorly written descriptions. A door that leads to nowhere, a window that peers into the night sky, an empty painting frame, a solitary light source, an empty shelf, and a bed. And while the content of the game does appear fairly amateurish, the voice of our player seems to find the game a little too funny.
Oh my god, it's so bad. Okay.
Perhaps just playing up the reaction for the camera. After finding nothing else to do in the room, the player's only option is to sleep, which leads him to a screen with a simple prompt. What summon?
What? Is this like a...
Confused, the player tries typing apple, which the game accepts, moving to a loading screen. And that's where we're left for the first episode. We pick up right where we left off, with the character loading back into the room after waking up. At this point, our Let's Player is a little confused, perhaps even unsettled.
I'm feeling hungry.
The door that was previously blocked is now mysteriously open, and our player is having trouble hiding the real unease he seems to be feeling. It doesn't feel like a joke anymore. Moving into this new room, we find a similarly barren kitchen, lit from a single non-diegetic light source. On the counter, a single apple sits. Just what I was looking for. It looks like the game did, in fact, summon what he asked it to. This confuses and even scares the player.
What the Wait, what the fuck?
Bro would go crazy if he found out about Scribblenauts. Perturbed, the player makes his way back to the kitchen to find the painting has now been filled in. A painting of an apple. A painting of the apple I just found. This, again, seems to rattle the player.
Okay, what the fuck is going on? What the fuck is going on?
And he goes back to the kitchen to investigate the apple again. This time, the description is, all I can think about is this apple. Without much to do and the prospect of this summoning feature to test again, our player goes back to the bed, theorizing an apple is just one of the few things the game knows how to summon, or that it was a strange coincidence. When prompted what summon, he decides to try something more specific, water bottle. And just like the last video, it ends here. The first thing of note when our player wakes up is the floor. Now, instead of a plain color, the ground has been replaced by a more detailed wood texture. Strange. Going to the window, it now states, "I had my first ever meal last night." The painting nearby is blank again, and there's an apple core on the shelf. Apples are my only favorite thing. Moving into the hall, there's a new room. Empty aside from a desk and an odd warping sound, the water bottle that was summoned last night lays on the ground.
What the fuck was that? What the fuck was that? What the fuck? Where the fuck did it go? Where the fuck did it go?
It's worth noting, judging by the footsteps, it sounds like this entity ran to the kitchen from the bedroom. Finding nothing in the kitchen aside from the message, "Make new items cold" when interacting with the fridge, our player moves back to the bedroom. The painting appears at first to still be empty, until he turns away and looks back to see a new painting, an apple core with water surrounding it. I made paint of both apple and water. Our Let's Player decides to go back to bed and try to summon a door in order to guard himself from the creature that now seems to be roaming the house. And that's the end. Before we move on to the analysis, I think it's worth noting the descriptions of each video. First day at the summon house. Unnamed man. House was ridiculed when he entered. Explored thoroughly. Summoned apple. Second day at the summon house. Unnamed man. Light turned on by itself. Explored thoroughly. Canvas filled in. Third day at the summon house. Unnamed man. Encountered creature. Explored thoroughly. Canvas filled in. So again, this is a pretty short series, and we're left with very little to go on because, well, it's not finished, just awaiting reboot. But I think it's still got a lot of interesting questions that we can attempt to answer with what we have. Alright, so let's try to get a baseline understanding. This digital house the player moves through is the summon house, right? But what exactly is it? What is the mechanism that allows it to dynamically change and interact with the player? It's not just the summoning. Interacting with objects at different times in different circumstances give different text, rooms are added and textures change. To me, this seems to point to this house being a dynamic entity. It's not just a stage, it's an actor, some kind of AI or consciousness that isn't rudimentary just because the developer didn't have a lot of assets and time, but because the house is still evolving, learning. And as it's introduced to new items, concepts, and playtime, it begins improving, adding detail and rooms. The text we see when interacting with objects isn't a player character's dialogue, it's the house, the game itself talking to the player, which is why the text seems broken or childlike. It's still developing, it's still in a childlike state. And that opening, game smile, I don't think that's a logo. I think that's literally the game smiling at the player, a rudimentary form it's taken, which explains why we hear that same laugh throughout the game as things change inside the house.
What the
At least, that's what it appears to be for me. Alright, so initially I had this whole theory about how the door that he summoned at the end of the third video ended up actually summoning a doorway into reality for the summon house entity and it escaped, and that was why there were no more videos in the series, and well then, yeah, the series isn't actually over, just being rebooted at a later date, so it's not impossible that that's where the door thread was going, and I do like the idea, but what actually happened, the actual reason there were no more videos, is that it was put on hold. So yeah. Okay, so this was a question I found really interesting to try to answer. Who is uploading these videos? Because the channel isn't called Cool Indie Game Let's Player 92, it's called Summon House, and the only videos on the channel are the Summon House Let's Plays. But the person playing seems to be talking as if he's made other videos and he's welcoming back an audience.
Hello everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be playing Summon House.
So the easier and more straightforward answer would be that this is a web series, and so it's being hosted on this channel, though in universe it's a Let's Play recording presumably up on another channel. But that explanation, it's too easy. The descriptions were the first thing that tipped me off to this being a question to ask. They aren't talking from the perspective of the person playing, or even someone finding these videos and re-uploading them somewhere. They're very odd and have an almost stilted clinical quality about how they're worded. Unnamed man. House was ridiculed when he entered. Explored thoroughly. Summoned apple. My working theory is that this too is the summon house, making its own recordings of the person playing, who also happens to be making a let's play. Then the house is uploading these videos on its own, which may explain why we always cut between the videos during the loading periods, and why the video description seems so unnaturally written. My other thought is that this is some kind of third party, maybe the developer of the game, maybe researchers or something, recording and logging how this game progresses. Okay, so if the summon house is its own entity, what was that shape that ran past and disappeared into the kitchen? Well, my best guess is that this is some kind of projection of the house itself, an anthropomorphized form that it is summoned. Speaking of summoned, alright, so we've established that this house seems to be some kind of living, evolving entity. What is this summoning thing all about? I get the feeling that the summoning isn't just a gimmick. I think it's the way that the house is being fed, allowing it to become more complex, giving the house more concepts, items, data to process and engage with, allowing it to interact, think about, and through that process, learn, evolve, and improve. This is literalized as the items that are summoned take the form of food and water, and after the apple is eaten, we see more detail added to the house and more complex interactions occur, adding sounds and entities on its own. We see it become fascinated by these concepts and immediately apply them to itself, which to me feels like a young AI trying to understand and learn from new concepts. Importantly though, these are additions to the structure in which it was already built, which leads me to the ghost in the machine. There's a few ways this concept of the ghost in the machine function in this series, the most clear of course being this emerging AI from a digital world, literally taking the form of not an entity in the game, but the game itself, and the house the game consists of. In another way though, it functions on the evolutionary level. We don't see this AI replace its parts as it goes, we see it add to them, adding rooms, items, sounds, textures, but it's all still built on top of the crude game it started as, and it leads itself in the same loop. Wake up, go to bed, what summon? While we didn't get quite enough episodes to see the ramifications of that, I do think that aspect is present. But to me, the most interesting way this series explores this concept of the mind-body separation and the idea of a consciousness in a machine is how the player interacts with the house. The house isn't the only consciousness there, so is the player. And because the game itself is alive, not a separate entity within the game, we don't just see the player interacting with a sentient entity, we see the player inside of one. In this way, the game becomes a machine, and the player becomes the ghost, the organic consciousness moving through it, changing it, helping it evolve. It's not just, oh, the game is alive. We're seeing the player become the haunting of this haunted house. It's thematically kind of similar to Teeny Toys in that sense, but obviously still very different. And again, we didn't see this idea get expanded on too much before it was put on hold, but I just find viewing players, us, even in our games in real life, as consciousnesses within the digital world, ghosts in the machine when we interact with our games, I think that's just a fascinating lens. Really though, that's all I have to say for now. I don't want to try to get too deep, and I'm not sure how deep I could go with what little information we have right now. I'm just looking forward to the rebooting of this series, because the concepts and execution here are on point. Through Summon House, we got to see perspectives completely shift. A player go from underestimating a game to being in fear of it, a game going from primitive to beginning to build upon itself, an AI learn and evolve, and as we peered deeper into the world of Summon House, we began to see that we, as the players, may, in the end, be ghosts in the machine. I don't have another series to introduce, but I do want to take a brief moment to discuss some of the overarching themes we've seen in this series, cross-analyze them with each other, and then maybe shout out some more interesting series going on right now. So, let's do that. Alright, so there are a couple different elements here that I want to look at, a few different lenses of this ghost in the machine element, which I've been discussing. Since I've already gone over how these affect each series in particular, this will be more about the larger themes explored by these projects. Let's start with ghosts as the past. So what do I mean when I say ghosts as the past? Essentially, I'm talking about the games functioning as time capsules, memories being preserved in the digital world. Most directly, we see this in both AndrewGaming and Teeny Toys, visiting these places from days gone by. For AndrewGaming, we see the world almost exactly as he left it, the signatures of himself and Chris preserved in time. In Teeny Toys, the concept is inverted, as Diego's memories of the game are replaced with this newer, emptier version, altering his recollection of the game. We also see this concept of a time capsule paralleled in a metaphorical sense. Diego literally talks to a past version of himself and gets glimpses of some frightening past event through forgotten screenshots stored on his old account. In both cases, it's footprints that these players leave behind that is important. Just like the departed in the physical world leave behind reminders of their existence, virtual ghosts also imprint the bytes of the worlds they inhabited. But unlike the world of the living, these bytes do not decay. Something about this perfect preservation of what they've left behind is uncanny, like they're once again able to speak, to communicate through a game. But we know they're not physically there. It's their shadow, their ghost, stranded in the machine. Beyond examining how players affect the virtual world in a past sense, we can also examine how players behave like ghosts in the present. When players enter the virtual world, they're in a way separating their mind from their body. How many times have you been aware of your body while you're doing something online or playing a game? The digital world allows expression independent of location or physicality, and doesn't that make it a little bit like ghosts or floating brains? And what happens when all these digital ghosts culminate together in a shared space, in a massively multiplayer online game? In these digital social spaces, it isn't fair to say that we no longer have bodies, but the avatars we select can be augmented or swapped as we move from one space to another. There's this increased disconnect in the virtual world between our minds and our avatars. Our minds are separate from the rest of the fabricated digital world. The computer is now the machine and our brain the ghost. This escapism of the soul from the physical realm is further dramatized with the concept of the metaverse, and I'm referring to the original meaning of that term. Second Life is one of the early examples of an immersive world that offered one the ability to do anything and become anything, fully freed from the physical constraints of the corporeal. This was stepped up a notch by the introduction of VR chat in 2014, and future technology may increasingly whittle away the boundaries between the virtual and physical. When we have full control over our virtual forms, we have the power to express ourselves exactly however we intend. And this can also make us more vulnerable, if what we show is an unfiltered glimpse into our minds. That's why in the worlds of Teeny Toys and Minecraft, there's this added layer of closeness in the interaction between digital residents. Andrew glimpses Chris's haunting notes scattered in their distorting shared world, notes more private than he'd have access to in reality. In Teeny Toys, the vulnerable nature of Diego's virtual avatar allows him to be hurt in a way that would otherwise be impossible in reality. The game becomes all-encompassing of his reality, and it attacks his very relationship with his fondly remembered past. Teeny Toy's story with the sick lion also touches on this element in a different way, with only the lion's brain remaining flesh and the rest becoming mechanical. The player characters in Teeny Toys mimic this pattern. Diego is a physical brain piloting a virtual robotic body, and just as the lion escapes his physical body through a robotic one, Diego may be using Teeny Toys as a form of escapism, similar to how players of VR chat and Second Life can use virtual avatars as an escape from a distressing physical reality. If Andrew and Diego are made virtual through playing their games, then there's no separation between them and the virtual monsters that inhabit these worlds. They're ghosts trapped in a machine that's beyond understanding. Summon House plays on this theme of being trapped in a machine as well, with the player inhabiting the body of a rapidly developing AI. And if players can exist virtually as conscious beings, what's stopping digital entities from gaining their own consciousness? A single neuron may not be sentient, but a large collection of them seems to allow a mind to inhabit it. So what happens when virtual neural networks become more and more complex? Is there a point in which a computer could gain its own ghost entirely within a digital space? So finally, I want to address the ghost in the machine through the lens of emergentism. Emergence refers to an entity that exhibits properties that do not belong to its parts, like the idea of sentience emerging from a collection of neurons. This idea has gripped science and science fiction alike. If complex enough, could any system develop sentience? Could a forest of connected roots be a conscious entity, a mycelial network? What about the internet, an incredibly complex interconnected web? If a computer became complex enough in just the right way, could it develop consciousness? This is what we see happen in Interloper, TWRINTK, and Summon House. The evolution of an AI, a piece of computer software or mainframe or bit of code that slowly becomes more and more complex in just the right ways to develop their sentience. For a lot of these, it seems to imply some use of genetic models, which are actually in use today, although the term AI for what we have going today is often a misnomer, as they're not really intelligent in that way. What's especially interesting about these, though, is how the older, more primitive tech these AI are being developed on, especially in the case of TWRINTK, affect how they function. TWRINTK is built on decades-old hardware, and how those limitations affect it is integral to the story. Fits of virtual insanity, the constant need to self-optimize to keep itself from utterly breaking down. Interloper is sort of similar, in that the restrictions of its tech seem to hold back these emerging intelligences. breaking or corrupting their very reality. In addition, there's some sort of entity put in place to keep them getting too smart. These obstacles prevent them from realizing an actualization that's only keystrokes away. This theme of perpetual optimization also plays on fears of the unknown. We're not able to understand how these virtual ghosts function. The algorithm that drive their development cause chain reactions too complex to model. This is also represented in real-world behavior of self-optimizing code. A famous paper by Adrian Thompson detailed his experiments in training a computer chip to recognize two different signals while confined to a very small number of internal parts. After 5,000 generation cycles, the chip behaved perfectly, but when Dr. Thompson went to examine the underlying circuit, he found a bunch of seemingly useless parts. However, after removing some of these unused cells in the circuit, the function of the circuit could be severely impacted. The chip had learned how to utilize complex physics-related behavior of the cells to do its job in a way that is not easily understandable by humans. And the unparsable complexity of self-optimizing models adds a layer of alienation to the concept of a virtual ghost. A ghost that we may never fully understand. Life given to a machine. Each one of these series I've covered explore a unique perspective of a ghost in a virtual world, from ghosts to AI to memories to humans themselves. I have to be honest, I felt the limitations of my own analytical abilities here. I ended up having to get quite a bit of help from some tech-savvy friends of mine. I'm a lot better hardwired to come up with theories versus like traditional philosophy or breaking down tech. I hope I've been able to point out some interesting ways to view these projects outside of just spooky video game though, and I really recommend checking all of them out. Thank you all for watching, and a huge thank you to all of the communities and people that are essentially built around solving these things and compiling theories about these things. I'm sure you're sick of me saying it by now, but again, as many of these as I've been able to keep track of, I will put in the description. Also, while I mostly used music from my last digital horror video, which is on Spotify, I also composed a few extra tracks for this video, which I've put in a little compilation album on Spotify as essentially a B-sides for that last album. If you're interested in listening to any of them, it should be on Spotify by now. That includes a special end credit song that will play at the end of this. Thanks to my patrons for supporting. If you'd like a chance to see early access content and vote on different topics and look at exclusive videos that I'll upload on there, then you could consider subscribing to the Patreon. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.